Good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our Monday, June 7th, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting. At 5 o'clock, we had a work session on campgrounds, and to let everyone know that we will be without one of our commissioners this evening. Ms. Kitty Etheridge will not be with us this evening. The first order of business is our invocation and pledge of allegiance. We do not have anyone signed up to do that. Is there anyone in the audience would wish to come up and lead us in prayer and the pledge of allegiance? Seeing none, I'll ask our Vice Chairman if he would so do that for us.
Heavenly Father, I thank you for this time of year. We came out of seemed like 40 days and nights of constant rain, and you brought the sunshine to remind us that there always is day that follows the night. And then, just to keep us humble, you sent the rain after all of the sunshine. Father, and thank you for answering, I'm sure, our farmers' prayers that you would send water to their crops. Father, I ask your blessing upon this evening. Lord, I pray that you would first and foremost bless Kitty and help her with the issues she's dealing with right now, Lord. But I pray that you would give each and every one of us wisdom as we contemplate the issues before us this night concerning our beloved county, Currituck. Father, bless this evening, and in Jesus' name I ask. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Beaumont. The next item is the approval of agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move that we swap items C and D under public hearings, consideration of expansion of the Moyock Township Watershed Improvement Service District to be heard first, followed by consideration and possible adoption of the annual budget.
Okay, a motion. Have a second. Any further discussions to the agenda? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you, sir. Okay, the next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for our citizens to come before the board, speak whatever's on your mind. You're going to have 3 minutes of uninterrupted time. You can discuss, comment, holler at us, anything you want to do, and we're not going to interrupt the public. So at this time, I have two people. When you come up, if you could please state your name and address for the record. And if you see up there, there'll be a green light that our county attorney will signal this time, and then you'll get a yellow light when you're getting close. And when your 3 minutes are done, if you're still going, you'll see a red light. So just kind of please wrap up your thoughts if you could. The first person I have for public comment is Myra Frazier.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Myra Frazier. I live at 133 Pinto Drive, Moyock. I also own 131 Pinto Drive in Moyock. I'd like to make comments about the proposed district coming up for the combining, the way I see it, of the Guinea Canal advisory district into Moyock. I looked online about a month ago, and I found the people that were on the advisory board.
Excuse me, Ms. Frazier. Is this something that you wanted to sign up and talk on the subject for public hearing when that comes up for the water district? Because we did have a sign-up sheet to speak specifically on that, if that's what you were intending to do. You're more than welcome to discuss it in a public comment. But we did have a sign-up. If you'd like to, we can get you into the public hearing on the expansion of the Moyock Township watershed improvements. If this is what you were choosing to discuss, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that, but I just have a few comments to make on this and a few questions, so about things. So.
Okay, I mean, like I said, you're more than welcome to, but again, we're not going to discuss any questions at this time. But it's your prerogative on that, and then if you'd like to come up again, I'll just offer it up again to anybody who hasn't signed up.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll just keep going.
Okay.
Okay, so I looked online. I couldn't find anything from the advisory meetings for the Guinea Canal. The last one, I think, was February 2020. I think the whole year was kind of like shut down for everything. When I went to a community meeting regarding some of the proposed places that were, developments that were put up on the highway, one of the gentlemen there said, well, a lot of those people don't come to the meeting, and some of them are deceased. So he said, I'm not sure what they're doing, but he said, I don't think they're meeting. So I wanted to try to get that going. It seems a little too late for that since, from what I understand, Guinea Canal Advisory Board is going to be rolled into the new Moyock district, which I think that's fine. But I had a question about, because we've been paying tax money into it, how much money there was in there and where the money goes. So if I could get some direction on that later on from the county, that would be good. When I've called different offices, a lot of them are closed now. The person's out of the office and doesn't answer. So I'm looking for it to pick up, and I'm trying to get educated on all of this myself. I'm not sure how many board members are going to be contained in the new water district, but from what I've seen online, there's 6 to 8 people that are in each advisory board. I don't know if the Moyock district's going to be a little larger. I saw one person was in on the Guinea Canal Water Advisory, and he was also under the Moyock one, so kind of doing double duty, I guess, if he had to. I'd like to propose at least 2 people from Ranchland, which is in the Guinea Canal, original Guinea Canal district, to serve on the new board, if that's possible. I know there's an application form. I'm not sure what to do with it after that. Also, I looked online to get a background on the Guinea Canal, and the Army Corps Engineers made a drainage plan, and they suggested 6 different things. I could not find that, and I could not find a recent map of the Guinea Canal. So anything that the commissioners could do to help me with that, I'm good with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fraser. Next I had for public comment was Gavin Malaya. Is that correct? If I pronounce it wrong? Yes, sir. If you state your name and address for the record, sir?
Thank you. My name is Gavin Melia, and my address is 155 West New York Avenue in Southern Pines, North Carolina. Thanks for the opportunity to speak, address you all this evening. I'm one of the partners of Moyock Development Group, and we are the owner of the Tractor Supply Store and the remainder of the parcel that we bought from Calvary Christian Church here in Currituck County. And I just wanted to talk to you guys today about sewer availability. When we were looking for land for Tractor Supply in this market, Moyock and beyond, we came to Currituck County and met with county leadership and economic development as part of our effort to evaluate sites. We looked at a few sites and settled on the 6.86 acre site at 166 Currituck Highway. The feature that set this site apart from any others was that it was represented by county officials as, quote unquote, already having sewer, in an allocation of 880 gallons per day per acre. The church would not subdivide the parcel and allow us to take only that acreage needed for the tractor supply, so we had to buy all 6.86 acres. But we did so confident that the remnant parcel would have value, because not only was it located beside a new tractor supply, but unlike any other commercial sites in the county, it already had sewer allocation. We put the land under contract and began to pursue permits. We spent a lot of time energy and money making sure that the site would work for our needs, even rewriting those parts of the ordinance regarding outdoor display and presenting it to this very Board of Commissioners for approval. We further enticed Tractor Supply with a very competitive rent on this site because, again, we believed that the remnant had value and because the county represented it had sewer allocation. When we drew the plans, which the county has permitted, we drew 2 sewer lines connecting the manhole on Homestead Drive to the remnant parcel, which are in the ground today and intended for connection upon development of the remnant parcel. I heard only last week that the county has only 7,000 gallons per day sewer capacity to ration out, and that Tractor Supply's allocation is coming from that. I heard this morning in a meeting with Will Rumsey and Ben Steichleather that the remainder has been divided among other potential projects and that there is no allocation for the remnant parcel at this time. We feel we should be first in line for allocation from that 7,000. We have a buyer for the remnant parcel, and that buyer has signed a purchase agreement which we have in hand. We have been representing this property to the buyer the same way it was represented to us by the authority having jurisdiction, Currituck County, and that it has sewer allocation. And now we're no longer confident to represent it so.
Excuse me, sir, could you hurry? I mean, you're beyond your allotted time. We're going to let you finish up, but if you
They
could just
told
wrap
me
it up.
They told me I'd have violins to play me off.
Wait, I'm sorry.
I believe I'll just finish up
Okay,
quickly.
thank you, sir.
I believe that if the county had properly represented the site to us, we would have made some different decisions. We would have either been first in the queue for allocation, or we would have built the Tractor Supply just a stone's throw up the road in a different county. I respectfully ask the commissioners to work with county staff and DEQ as necessary to find an immediate solution for our remnant parcel so that we can sell the parcel and you can collect tax dollars and fees, etc., from the new development there. Thanks very much.
Thank you, sir. I do not have anyone else signed up for public comment. Is there anyone else out there that did not get a chance would like to speak? Yes, sir. If you could just come up to the podium and state your name and address to the record, please.
Hi, my name is Jacek Vakala. I live at 115 South Landland Drive, and I like to quickly discuss the very first topic. Did I hear that you guys approved, what was the name of that project? The very first topic.
Truck Accessory Center?
Excuse me?
The Truck Accessory Center? That's right.
No, I'm sorry. The watershed.
Watershed. No,
You know what? I got this letter from you guys saying that there's going to be a discussion about a watershed, and then I hear all of a sudden, did you guys approve that?
No, sir.
Excuse me?
No, sir.
Okay. What I
discuss.
don't understand is, what is a watershed project? Are we talking about drainage ditches?
Well, we're going to be going at it a little later, sir, and it's going to be discussed, so that's part of one of our items to discuss later.
Well, this is the main reason why I came down. On my property, I live right behind Domino's, which they have a covered fence, and on the right-hand side, I have a drainage ditch that's as long as my house, and I'm the only one out of my property that cuts everything so the water can be drained from the sun. So I don't understand what is going on with this. Maybe you can provide some clarification. What I can tell you, I've been living there. I lived in 115 South Landing Drive for over 21 years. And what we used to have is non-lethal inmates that used to come down, and what they did, they used to come down with the sheriff's department, and they used to clear the drainage ditches. So I'm wondering, what happened to that? So the next question is, if this is what this is all about, is there going to be a company that is going to be doing that? And are we going to be paying for that? This is my biggest question. When when the prisoners or the guys would come down, I would give them iced tea. They were very appreciative. So why did it stop? I don't understand. Why did it stop? Are you guys proposing something, a company to pay for the services that we used to get for free? I don't understand. But anyway, my time is almost up, and I hate to take your time, but please consider this. You know, our taxes keep going up, and I am more than happier than a pig in feces that I live in Moyock because taxes don't go up that much. However, I do question some of the items that we talk about, especially, well, you know what? These guys that are in jails and stuff, they love to come out. Please help them. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. And believe me, you're not taking our time. This is your time. So we appreciate you coming up and expressing your views.
Thank you. And this is my first time I've been here.
Thank you,
but
sir.
this is something near and dear to me.
I
You
appreciate
did great. You can come back anytime.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Okay.
But you can't leave till the end of the meeting.
All right. Is there anyone else who did not sign up would like to speak in public comment? All right. Well, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public comment and move on to our next item, which is the commissioner's report. And tonight, I am going to start on my left tonight with Commissioner Jarvis.
Thank you. I don't have much. I just want to inform the board and the public that I will not be here for the meeting on June 21st. Much like many people during the pandemic, we have been isolated from families, and as my parents, my mother and my mother-in-law age, getting together with family is so important to me these days. So we'll be venturing to have a long-awaited family reunion with my husband's side of the family, so I will not be here. And I just ask everybody who's put off those family vacations to make the most of your family, treasure them, because no time is guaranteed and all time is precious. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarvis. Commissioner White.
Thank you, sir. Trying to be brief tonight. We're still getting a couple emails for those that have been watching the meetings. We've been going through some noise ordinance permitting stuff, and we've gotten emails. And for some reason, if you're from Whalehead and you're listening tonight, it's not about Whalehead. The noise ordinance changes we did affect the entire county. And Corolla particularly, we had to find a way to describe the homes and how they're used over there. And through that, we came up with a transient use. It did not change zoning. It did not do anything else. It just recognizes that the vast majority of homes in Corolla are used in a transient nature. People check in on Saturday, they check out on Sunday the following week. And so that is what we did to describe the use in Corolla and recognize that it is different than the mainland. So the mainland won't see any changes as far as the noise ordinance goes. Corolla really doesn't see any change either. What we did is change the ordinance to match the practice that's been going on for 20 years now or better, and so there's really no changes over there. So I just want to, hopefully everyone understands that and is clear on that it didn't change anything specifically, but for some reason the folks in Whalehead seem to think it affects only their neighborhood, and that is not the case. Also, we received a couple of emails about close calls with the beach this year. We've had one family that visited Corova that almost had a child drown, and same thing happened this past weekend as it happens at Whalehead Beach, and asking us for more lifeguards and more coverage. The Four Drive Beach, we have never had stationary lifeguards up there. It's too much area to cover. We have roving patrols to take care of those areas, and most people that go up there recognize that it's not there for them. On the paved areas in Corolla, we do have lifeguard services, and we have those stationed at areas that are highly concentrated, walkovers, public beach access, things of those natures. However, most of our lifeguards are college students. We have a few people that are career lifeguards, I guess, but it's not like California and Baywatch or whatever that show is in Australia, where they're out there all the time. So we have people that are temporary lifeguards during the summer. They come in at the height of our season. This year in particular, coming out of COVID, we have seen an explosion of people here that are not normally here. And so we're seeing a degree of change in the number of incidents in the ocean. So we spend a lot of money on our lifeguards. Commissioner Beaumont's very involved in that as well. He owns a home in Wellhead, and so we do what we can, as best we can, to keep our visitors safe here. And we just want everyone to understand that we spend a lot of money, almost $1 million a year, just to cover, just on lifeguards. That's it. That's just one of the many things we do to keep you safe, not to mention the several $1 million we spend every year on the sheriff's deputies over there ramping up, and our police, sheriff's department, and our fire department. I see our chief over there from Corolla here tonight. They do a fantastic job as well. So that's it for me this evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner White. I'll go ahead and jump on in next with a quick COVID update. Currituck County, as of Friday's report from the Albemarle Regional Health, Currituck only had 2 active cases, which is great since what we've been going through. And the neighboring communities and other areas, I've seen a decline. I've heard a decline going down as well, so that's a good news. The vaccine is still available. Call the Albemarle Regional Health. They will schedule you for your shots if you haven't had. If you want to get one, they're still available. So, yeah, again, it's a good thing. And the other thing I want to mention, this is our first meeting where we can say we're back to normal. What I mean by normal, we've never had the seats like this before. Everybody, all a nice commodity up here. Nice. It's good to see it back to the way this was prior to the COVID situation. So just want to welcome everybody back up here again. And Ben, you're up here, and Ike, and it's just great to see everybody up here. Last week I had the opportunity to have a meeting with U.S. Senator Tillis, with our county manager and our emergency management director, Mary Beth Nunes. We were able to discuss conditions after storms, how the federal government can help get involved, speed things. We brought some concerns. Some of the concerns we're dealing with FEMA, how they interact with us, consistency, getting faster response and help for our citizens. And another thing we discussed, and because I was asked to discuss it, we did discuss the dredging issues we have in the crawl area with our nice Army Corps of Engineer folks. They have heard similar discussion, so worked on that, as well as the bridge. Currently, the bridge, I know it's been 40 years I've been listening to it, but there's some federal permits we're waiting, and we've asked them to try to help get some information back to us and help maybe speed those permitting processes up. So it was a good meeting. He was glad to take a ride through here. We invited him to come take a ride up to Corolla on a weekend with somebody.
Saturday.
Saturday. To come enjoy the traffic up there. So he's going to think about it and get back with us on that. So, other than that, just keep your volunteer firefighters and your first responders in your thoughts and prayers. It's busy out there, and we're seeing constant activity. So that's all I have for this evening. So, Vice Chairman,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. To kind of tag team with what Commissioner White brought up, some of the statistics that are kind of interesting relative to ocean rescue. When Corolla Fire Department became full-time professional firefighters, one of the things that the chief there, or our chief here, and the departments down there stressed was cross-training. So every firefighter in Corolla is duly qualified, not only as an EMT, but also as a firefighter as well. I don't know how we either encouraged it or supported it or whatever, but many of our firefighters went and got their ocean rescue qualifications as well. Prior to ocean rescue coming on contract fully, which is typically Saturday of Memorial Day, our firefighters participated in 7 rescues prior to the prior to ocean rescue being on contract. What makes that significant is some of those folks, because again, as Commissioner White said, our beaches are busier. We're going to break all the records this year, is every indication. So we literally had firefighters out making first contact with people stranded in the water and rescued them. So that didn't cost the county anything extra, and it's just one of those services that we provide. One of the things that I truly enjoy is I get to address those lifeguards. This is my third or fourth year that I've had that opportunity to do that. And you want to talk about a group of professionals. They are probably the best trained on the beach. They are the most highly motivated on the beach. And they are number one committed to risking their lives and doing whatever it takes to keep our guests and our residents safe. I would ask everyone, use wisdom when you go to the beach. If it's rough and a lifeguard says you shouldn't go in the water, please don't go in the water. Because otherwise Kevin's going to have to call one of his friends on duty to come and haul you out and your $500 ticket. So anyway, and then the other thing I wanted to bring up is I had the opportunity of seeing the sailfish crossover. Part of what some of the occupancy tax has gone to is improving some of the crossovers that go over the sand dunes. Anyone that's not been out there recently, I know sailfish, the sand dune had grown so tall that a sheet of plywood on its side was being crested by probably 2 feet of sand over and above the sheet of plywood. So it is a stark rise in height. They are significantly wider than the formal crossovers, and the quality of workmanship and the handrails I think are stainless steel or something like that. They look like stainless steel, and blazing hot on Sunday. I was stunned that the handrail was cool. Anyway, if you're out on the beach and you get a chance to go look at them, there are more coming. But I was impressed, and so kudos to county staff and all of that, because the design, the installation was top notch. So thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
Okay, Commissioner Beaumont, Commissioner McCord.
Our superintendent, Dr. Matt Lutz, is here tonight. I'd like to thank him and their leadership. Myself and Commissioner Etheridge attended the graduation at the high school. I don't know if anybody in here had kids graduating or kids in it. Our school systems, as well as our school systems, maybe it's not working, I'll talk louder. Our school systems and our county, I mean, we're leaders and stuff. Last year we had fireworks. Nobody else had fireworks because everybody was COVID. I hate that word. But Dr. Lutz and his people, they did a phenomenal job. The high school graduation was outside. Mother Nature participated. The weather was nice. Everybody, if you want to wear a mask, you can wear a mask. It was outside. They did a great job. I mean, just phenomenal. There was some that they had a second ceremony for, if somebody had some health issues or whatever, where they had it was inside the second day. I believe it was 20-some kids where they didn't get as many tickets. So they, they went above and beyond to have 2 graduations, to do everything, to have parents want to see their kids graduate from school, their grandma and uncle, whatever. So they did a phenomenal job. I attended the sports award ceremony for the thing the other night. Same thing, due to some restrictions and whatever. Our athletic director, Todd Parker, he even had to give out sports to fill in for a couple of the coaches that couldn't be there because of reasons. I'm proud of where I live. I mean, I think they do a great job. Our schools are something that we invest money in our kids and the sports. I mean, I try to donate or attend, whatever. I mean, they hit you up all the time. I used to always get to cut the grass at middle school for free all the time. It was great. I'd love it when they'd call when their mower was broke. But it was all good. I mean, this is where we live. You need to give back to the community you live in. But kudos to him. Phenomenal job. The schools, they do a great job, and his leadership as well as his staff. Touching on the public safety, ocean rescue, those guys they're the best of the best. I mean, they could do their own little Baywatch show if they wanted. I mean, they do good. I work the beach duty sometimes in my other capacity. I'm the only county employee that doesn't get paid time and a half to do it, but that's regardless now as a joke. But I do work the beach duty some. I filled in some shifts for some of the guys where we were a little short. And those ocean rescue guys are phenomenal. Our EMS is phenomenal. Our fire staff, top notch. The sheriff's department. We have good public safety. Our dispatchers, you can't compare. So like I said, I'm proud of where I live, and we have good people here. And like I said, everybody needs to contribute to where you live and be proud of it. One final thing. Memorial Day weekend was last weekend. I believe we wrote 184 citations, the Sheriff's Department did, Memorial Day weekend. That's 184 violations, from DWI to speeding to whatever. The CNR calls that come in to dispatch, and it's not just the people with New Jersey and New York plates. It's some of our locals. On Friday, we wrote 6 tickets with people doing over 80 miles an hour in a 55. 6. So some of them a couple of them were 3 digits. Drive smart. Don't drive like an idiot on the road. You're going to get a ticket in this county. I guarantee that. So if it's not by Highway Patrol, it'll be by us. Like I said, I mean, it's not a race. I mean, it just amazes me how people get out there. It's probably why I'm always late for everything. I mean, I get there when I get there. But, be safe this summer. I mean, it's going to be hot. Be hydrated, all that good stuff. Be proud of where you live. Nothing's perfect, but we got it good here. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Cord. And now Commissioner Etheridge.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Kevin said, I attended high school graduation as he did. I was very impressed by the address that Taylor Ann McCarthy, who was the salutatorian, gave, and also Joanna Peyton Marsh, the valedictorian. They gave super speeches, as good as I've ever heard. Also, you mentioned COVID, and I want to just bring up one thing. We had a young lady who was an honors graduate and a North Carolina scholar who was not able to attend her graduation because she had COVID. Skylar Ann Mentier. She'd worked 12 years to get to that point where she could walk across that stage. And her mom and dad had the same hopes and aspirations of seeing her walk across that stage. And because she did have an issue with COVID, she wasn't able to do that. And that's one of the sad things, as well as people being very sick or passing away, that families, as Commissioner Jarvis just touched on, that, we're not guaranteed time. The only thing we're guaranteed is one day we will assume room temperature. But, it was sad to see that girl not be able to participate in her graduation. And keep that in mind when we talk about our people, that, everybody has their 15 seconds of fame, but she didn't get a chance to get it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Etheridge. The next item is our county manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep it relatively brief tonight and give you an update on just some of the projects that are going on. The Maritime Museum took a big step forward. This past week, the boats moved into the museum. So that's a really big deal. We'll be looking to schedule a ribbon cutting sometime in the next 4 weeks, I'd say. So we're really excited about that. To Commissioner Beaumont's point, and I say this every so often at one of these meetings, you all have a tremendous staff that sits behind you all as the Board of Commissioners, and they do great work. Some of it is obvious, such as projects like walkovers, and some of it is never seen. But I promise you, they're all working extremely hard for you all and for the citizens of this county, and I couldn't be any prouder to be the county manager for such an outstanding group of people, and that's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cycleather, we were talking about, just so we're clear on the sewage thing, could you just elaborate just briefly on how those allocations work and what the gentleman was referring to with Tractor Supply?
Certainly. So the way that sewer is in Moyock right now, we only had a certain amount of allocations that we could give out. We had 7,000 gallons from the state of North Carolina due to turning on the Moyock Commons plant behind the food line. So we reached out, and the word got out that we had those allocations, and what we did is allocated them on a first-come, first-served basis. The allocations are good for 1 year, and as we move forward, we're going to try to find some avenues to get some other allocations. We're always trying to think creatively, but ultimately it comes down to building a new sewer plant, which is something that we've talked at length about here. And so as we move forward with that project, once that project's completed, we should have more allocation that would come online.
Okay, so when they say that they had an allocation, that they really didn't. When they came forward with their project, Tractor Supply, we allocated them the necessary flow so that they could have their project, but it's not specific to a subdivided parcel.
That's correct. So the issue with that specific site is that they had a situation where they did not need a permit from the state of North Carolina for the Tractor Supply site. But DEQ, the state regulatory authority that oversees sewer and water in North Carolina, said that we had to use some of our 7,000 gallons to be able to hook up the Tractor Supply site, even though it did not need a permit. It was deemed permitted because it could gravity flow to the lift station that was already there at Countryside Estates. And so the state kind of changed the way that they interpreted that section. We're working with the state, with DEQ, to try to find some solutions on that one parcel, but the allocation form that we had for Tractor Supply was for 1,880 gallons for that store. We were able to honor that. The site itself does, once it's subdivided, it throws it into some different rules, but we're going to do everything within our power to work with anybody in the development community to try to make sure that commercial development's not stalled by anything here in Currituck County.
Thank you for clearing that, sir.
And the other thing I'd like to toss out is we as a Board of Commissioners were made aware of that issue as soon as it became an issue, but we can't predict when the state decides to do something that was not what we expected or what has typically happened. So most everybody in Moyock's been aware we've been struggling with wastewater for many, many years, and we are on a path to get fixed, but there's still some ramifications and still some issues that we're having to overcome.
With the plants that we
On the plants that the county owns, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing for the county manager, I know we're still trying to reach the North Carolina Department of Transportation. However, if you could make a phone call to someone and see if they could at least fill in those potholes in front of the food line at the stoplight by 168.
Sinkholes.
Sinkholes, yes, that's what they've turned into. A lot of people calling me that somebody thought they were going to get stuck in one of them.
I'll reach out to our local maintenance shop and see if they can do something.
Something, yes, because
Yes,
it's
sir.
getting pretty bad.
And
Is
Mr.
that
Chairman,
Grandview or Moyock?
if I could throw out, as the commissioner that serves on the ARPO when we have ARPO meetings, part of the crisis that's going on with NCDOT right now, it's twofold. Number one, Raleigh had a great idea 20, 30 years ago to basically preserve property value in and around interstate exchanges or prospective interchange exchanges, and made it so that people couldn't sell their land, right? So for 20, 30 years, property owners were stuck. Well, they won in court, and I think the current estimated payout from North Carolina DOT is $1.3 billion. So the NCDOT owes, and by the way, none of these projects were in our area. It's all Raleigh, it's all west of here. So that's number one. And number two, when the COVID situation came out, what's the number one thing that basically happened? People work from home. People weren't allowed to go on vacation. Therefore, people weren't driving. So the number one source of revenue for the county from a transportation and road maintenance is from sales or from a tax, road tax, that's on the fuel that we buy. So DOT's in a crisis because nobody was driving, therefore there was no revenue coming in. Meanwhile, they're paying out a $1.3 billion settlement. So, sorry.
No, thank you.
Digression,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to add to that State Auditor Beth Wood's report last year about this time, or around this time, came out and said that DOT had overspent their budget the previous year by $900 million. So they had to find that money somewhere. Hopefully the General Assembly will do something to change the management and oversight over NCDOT so something like that doesn't happen again, because there's evidence that it occurred years and years ahead of time.
Many years. Okay, does that conclude the manager's report now? Okay, thank you, Mr. Seigler. Next on the agenda is the county attorney's report.
Mr. Chairman, on May 24th, I attended an administrative session of Superior Court to report to the court the status of lawsuits that the county is currently involved with. The administrative session of court occurs every 6 months for parties in lawsuits to report to the senior resident Superior Court judge the status of the cases and what, if anything, the parties would like to have pursued in court during the next 6 months. Currituck County, and I reported, is currently involved in 8 lawsuits. Interestingly, 5 of the 8, and probably not surprisingly, are land use related lawsuits. Only 1 of the 8 is county initiated. The county spends most of its time with lawsuits defending the county against the lawsuits. And as I've said to the board before in work sessions, it is certainly an important aspect of preserving the integrity, particularly of Unified Development Ordinance, and the community value that's expressed through the land use plan, for the county to defend its ordinances rather than to just give up and walk away. And so it's been a principled position that this board currently and boards in the past have taken to defend the county and its ordinances unless and until such time as community values change and the governing board at the time thinks it is appropriate to amend ordinances. I guess tonight, rather than going through each of the lawsuits, I'll do that some other time in the interest of brevity. I know we have a long agenda tonight. I also want to point out, secondly, that I also handle code enforcement matters once the code enforcement officer gets continued resistance, and there needs to be a little extra pressure placed upon someone to come into compliance with the Unified Development Ordinances. Currently, there are 11 referrals or files in my office from code enforcement. The practice usually is that I will send a demand letter to the property owner, giving them yet again one more opportunity to come into compliance, usually about 10 days, and upon their failure to do so, we'll then initiate a complaint or lawsuit seeking the collection of any civil citations that may have been issued in an attempt to cause compliance, and also to seek an injunction from the court requiring compliance. Of those 11 referrals, 9 demand letters have been sent to property owners. 2 more are going out this week. Out of the initial 9, 2 persons have actually responded to code enforcement and entered into compliance plans, which is what we would prefer. 7 complaints or 7 letters have not been responded to, and so I'll be drafting complaints to seek judicial intervention to cause compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McCree. Okay, next on the agenda is our administrative reports, and this evening we have the YMCA State of the Y Annual Report.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting us today, and Commissioner Payne. We're excited to be back to normal. You know, to have just be close to each other again, without masks, see the smiles, just refreshing. Just refreshing. My name is Dean Maddox. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for the YMCA of Southampton Roads, and was the former District Vice President for the region. But you may not know this. One of my pinnacle moments of my 25-year career happened in Currituck County, where I was fortunate enough to serve as the executive when the Y opened here a number of years ago. Now we've passed it off to someone who's much smarter than I am, Heather. But it's an honor to be here tonight and just to give you an overview of the Y from a global standpoint, and then I'll pass it off to Heather to hear more about your YMCA. So when I talk to my colleagues throughout the Y movement, I often bring up the Currituck County YMCA and the partnership and leadership that you all show. And the conversation goes something like this. It just makes so much sense, you know, to put a YMCA and a Parks and Rec department and a senior center and cooperative extension all in the same campus, in the same building. When there's a question about who's going to do what, we just walk down the hall and we have a conversation, you know, and we get it done. And we leverage the power of the partnership to serve the community. It just makes so much sense. And it just makes me sad, to be honest, when I look across the movement. We don't see the kind of leadership and partnership that you all have demonstrated to serve the county. So thank you for that. It's making a huge difference. So the YMCA of Southampton Roads, as you know, COVID obviously has had a tremendous impact on our organization. We went from a $52 million nonprofit to a $32 million nonprofit through COVID, so $20 million of loss there. We furloughed staff, we laid off staff, we closed 2 of our properties. It's been a difficult and challenging time for us. But when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And so we just pivoted. And you'll hear more of that from Heather. We partnered with school systems across the region to offer ELA. So when children were learning from home or in hybrid models, there was a place for them to go on those other days off. We partnered with the food bank to distribute food throughout the region. In addition to that, we added 24-hour access to your YMCA, which is pretty incredible. I didn't think that would happen, but COVID brought it about, and we made it happen. And in addition to that, last weekend, with This Is a Miracle, we opened a new YMCA in Northampton County on the Eastern Shore right across the bridge. So the future is bright. We're seeing some neat things. I don't want to steal Heather's thunder, but she'll share some statistics. And it's not just at your YMCA, but it's our YMCAs across the region. So thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision and foresight. This is your YMCA. And Heather and myself are here to serve you in any way we possibly can.
Thank you, Dean. So for those who don't know me, my name is Heather Scott. I'm very blessed and honored to say I'm a native of the county. My journey led me away for a little bit, and I was eager to get back into the county, and I was fortunate that Dean Maddox hired me as the District Health and Wellness Director serving Albemarle, Outer Banks, and Currituck counties. I then was honored to absorb the role as Executive Director. I started in January 2020. So my first year as Executive Director was challenging. I had to navigate, unfortunately, our facility being closed for 6 months. However, we were very creative, we were innovative, we were able to problem solve and still bring the Y to our community members. We brought services outside. We had group exercise classes outside. We were able to offer summer camp for those families as well as emergency child care for those essential care workers. Not the numbers that we're used to say the least, but we were able to overcome those challenges and continue serving the community in the way that we had proposed to. Reopening in September, we went full head. So opening the building, getting our ground, realizing that we had a struggle with staffing. And I think many in the community are also seeing that challenge. Still not where we want to be with staffing. However, the team that we have now are very dedicated to serving our community. They're very dedicated in making sure that our Y is successful, not for just us as individuals, but also for those that we serve in regards to our youth, building our clinical fitness programs, as well as serving for social responsibility. So for our youth development, we were actually able to serve, as I said, camp last summer. I am honored to say that this year for camp, we are serving currently 115 youth. We started Monday, so that's been fun. But we are serving 115 youth in camp, and that age is from 4 to 12 years old. In addition, we're looking at hopefully developing a teen development center, which is going to target youth from 13 to 16 years old. And taking that a step further, we're going to look at additional scholarships. We've been able to partner with JCPC. We worked very closely with Renee Dowdy. We've also worked very closely with Currituck Kids to make sure that we are able to secure scholarships for those families that need the child care but unable to afford it. That is something that we are very, very blessed to have those community partnerships moving forward, and we hope that those partnerships strengthen as well. Going into healthy living, we are gracefully bringing back our clinical fitness programs. Our Live Strong at the YMCA program services cancer survivor, those currently living, going through, or navigating their afterlife of having cancer. And so funding is required for that. We've secured funding, so I'm very thankful for that. But we're going to be serving that population starting in September, and that's been something that's near and dear to my heart. It has affected many family members of mine. So that is a program that I am beyond excited to bring back. It's 12 weeks, social support, fitness opportunities. We bring in nutritionists, we bring in physicians, healthcare providers, motivational speakers, and the program is free of charge for our community members who qualify for it. In addition to that, we've been working with Centera Physical Therapy for their transitions program. We've received a lot of referrals, so we're able to help pulmonary rehab patients, we're able to help diabetic patients, balance impairments, as well as orthopedic recoveries. And so that's going to be also starting back up in September. And then going into social responsibility, we've partnered, as Dean said, with the food bank. We are getting back to the norm of offering blood drives in the gym. We're finally able to do that again. And so we'll have blood drives hosted at the facility. We're going to be working with the Lower Currituck Food Bank again. During furlough and during the time that our facility was closed, a lot of my staff actually took initiative to go and help out the Lower Currituck Food Bank. And they did it with the grace of their heart. And it was not required. It was just something that they truly felt very passionate about doing while they were not at the YMCA. So we're going to continue that partnership. And moving forward, it's slow. I'm going to be honest, but we opened our outdoor pool, so if anybody wants to come and check it out, it's freshly repaired. It's beautiful. But I'm here to serve you. So many of you might know me by an email name, but now that I am able to make an appearance, introduce myself, I hope that anybody who has questions or concerns or comments about your local Currituck Family YMCA, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Heather.
Or concerns?
Well, I'm going to open the board up to any questions that you may have for Heather or the Y, or Dean is here too.
The 24, I have my youngest son, the 24-hour fitness.
Yes.
The kid goes to the Y every day.
Yes.
My money's worth, so I'm very thankful. For the 24-hour, he would go, and what time is the Y open? I don't know. You know, he would ask me all the time. He's like, they're closed at this, but the 24-hour thing, I mean, is awesome that we have that here. It gives people a reason to not go because it's like 24 hours. But I do want to ask this, and I'm not being funny when I ask this. I know some seniors that were going in the mask. What's the mask mandate policy at the Y now?
So currently, we are asking that if you're vaccinated, that you do not wear your mask, but you hand sanitize, wash your hands, still maintain social distance. If you're not vaccinated, we still do require masks to be worn during exercise and at all times in the building.
Mr. Chairman, I want to commend the Y because back in September, I think it was when we had the issue at Eagle Creek, they generously opened their facilities so that people that were not unable to take a shower at home could come in and shower, and I thank them for that. The other comment, I had the fortune of working with Dean and everybody when we started the Y concept back in 2004. And it came to fruition, and I think it's like he said, I've had county commissioners across the state ask me, how did y'all do it? Why did you do it? And I said, for us, it was the best thing to do for our citizens. So I want to commend Dean for his efforts in helping us get the thing going back in 2006, 7, and 8.
So I remember when I was there for the grand opening of the Y, and it is a tremendous facility. And but I've got a couple questions that I'd like either for you to consider or to take back, and it has to do with the summer programs. Mm-hmm. I understand that we have campers in the gyms and in the pools, and going back to it's a resource of the counties, if you will, and clearly the YMCA runs the YMCA. But when I've got a grandmother with 3 kids that she's trying to teach how to swim, for example, and no morning sessions are available for residents to take our kids to the pool. There's a little bit of why is it monopolized by the camps is the first question. And then kind of along those lines, I think a comment that was told them is we don't want our campers interacting with the normal or with the residents or with members, which I'm not really sure where that or what the philosophy of that comment is. And then my third question is there seems to be a different standards for how when campers are in the pool, it's kind of a free-for-all. I mean, with lifeguards, I get all that. But yet, if a guest or if one of our members brings their kids to the pool, parent has to be or guardian has to be next to theirs the whole time they're in the water. So need some understanding, and if now's not the time to give that answer, that's fine. But
You've definitely brought some valid concerns to the table. That's something that we have absolutely identified. Hence the reason why our outdoor pool is not offering camp swim lessons at this time, at least for probably the month of June, just because we are unable to staff it safely, and we're not trying to take away that valuable time from our residents and our members that are willing to use it. So our outdoor pool is opening at 12 to 6, completely open swim. We have nixed the reservation system, so as you come, we're full capacity again. We're not restricting the amount of people. But it is something that I can work with our senior leadership team. I know it has been a concern for me when we do have camp swim lessons and we have our camp swim specialists. There's maybe 2 or 3 for the amount of children, and then open swim, the rule of thumb is that your child is supposed to be with arm's length. So that is something that we are working through. There's a reason why we pulled back some of that programming to make sure that we get it right. We reintroduce it safely, and we do it to the best of our ability, but also to the best interest of the community.
okay, so why do they not have any opportunity to swim in the morning?
Currently, we just repaired our outdoor pool. So as we're having the staffing issue, a lot of our lifeguards are in high school. They just recently graduated. So in order for them to become certified, fully staffed lifeguards, they have to go through at least 40 hours of training. So our aquatics director is offering this week of lifeguard training as well as next week of lifeguard training to get those high school students certified. Once we have them certified, we're going to be able to open up the outdoor pool for those morning hours.
So the outdoor pool is not open in the mornings right now?
Just weekends, no sir.
Okay.
8 to 5, you can come by my house if you want to use my pool. So, careful what you ask for. Nobody's we're always at work.
Heather, I just would like to thank you for your work with the JCPC and the scholarship opportunities that were made available this year for our seniors. That is invaluable help to our seniors that have graduated and struggled with how they were going to pay for the ability to move on. So I just want to thank you for your work. I know how much time, effort, and energy you dedicated to that, and I'm very thankful.
I appreciate it. I want to say personally thank you so much. We were able to offer, as of right now, 4 counselors in training. And they're entrenched in the workforce. They're working alongside our summer camp counselors, and their parents have not had to pay for camp at all because of the scholarship and grant opportunities.
And, excuse me, and I just want to follow up. I do sit on the Currituck Kids Board. I've been with Currituck Kids since 2009. The Currituck Kids is a lot for our youth in the county of Currituck. We help sponsor the day camps. We work with the Y. And I just want to commend the Y for the volunteers they send to different activities that Currituck Kids does throughout the year, and working with Currituck Kids with the scholarships and getting kids in there to help our community, be successful. And they've done a great job working with Currituck Kids. And on behalf of Currituck Kids, I just want to say thank you to the Y for what you've done, for the Currituck kids and the community here. So
absolutely. Anytime you need us, just let us know. we're there.
Any other comments, commissioners, or anything? Or?
I feel like I should say something. Everybody else says it. For all, so.
You want a satellite center? I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. I'm just kidding.
Well, thank you again for coming out, Dean and Heather, for updating us. I know it's been a long time. It's been a struggling year. I think we're all thankful to get back to normal and see everybody be successful and back to where we were. And we're going to get there. All of us working together. This community is a strong community, and it's gonna come together. So thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you for all of your time. Have a wonderful evening. I'll see you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we get into the public hearings, would the board like to take a 5-minute break, or are we good, or a 5-minute? Okay, let's take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll get back into the public hearings. Thank you.
That's fine.
All right, everybody, we're going to go ahead and reconvene here back into our scheduled meeting. And the next item is public hearings. The first item on the public hearings is PB 21-08, Truck Accessory Center, request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 5, Development Standards to allow off-site storage and display of recreational vehicles and trailers associated with an existing business. And I believe we have, get it up here. All right, Mr. Literal will be presenting tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant, Truck Accessory Center, has been operating in the county for a good number of years now, and their business has grown to the point where they no longer have room on their current site to store all of the RVs that they have to offer for sale. And so that's the reason we're here tonight, to discuss their requested text amendment to allow off-site storage of their inventory. And at first glance, you may notice large differences between what they submitted for the request and what staff's suggestions, the product of that. So really the main difference is that they had proposed the amendment underneath the parking section in the ordinance. And after thinking about it, staff has decided that it's really more of a storage use, what they're proposing to do. And we also removed several of their requested amendments that were already existing in the ordinance. So they made cross references to certain sections of the ordinance that would apply to this use. And we decided just to make it more concise and let those existing ordinance sections be where they are instead of making them redundant in this new section. So that's part of the reason why you'll see a large difference between the number of items they had, number of regulations they had in their request versus what staff is suggesting. So in the end, you can see that here we have basically 3 new regulations that came out of all of this. 2 of which they had suggested and 1 that staff has added. So uses primarily involving the sales or rental of recreational vehicles or travel trailers may include 1 off-site storage area, and off-site storage areas shall meet the following standards. The areas designated for off-site storage of recreational vehicles shall be no farther than 2,000 feet from the use it is intended to serve, and no pedestrian way is required between the 2 areas if they are on different sides of a state-maintained highway, street, or right-of-way. And then actually number 3 was their other one that they had proposed, saying that any area approved for the off-site storage of recreational vehicles shall provide sufficient access and turnaround space for emergency vehicles, and that such access and turnaround areas must at a minimum be covered in gravel of sufficient depth and width to support a 75,000-pound fire truck. And that is in there because they had suggested to be able to store these RVs on gravel. There are other uses in the ordinance, such as vehicle sales, that would require you to pave a display area. But we're treating this more like storage as opposed to display. So that's why this language is in there about the emergency vehicles. So there at least that area for them to come in and turn around safely.
Jason, I would change fire truck to read fire apparatus.
Sure. Okay.
Just to be consistent.
Right. Okay. We can do that. And then number 2 is the one that we added. They had suggested some additional plantings and stuff like that that would apply, or even existing landscaping sections from the ordinance that would apply to this use. But we felt the most important thing to do, given the location on the highway and right as you enter the county, would be to try to screen that as much as we can. And so staff has proposed to require a type D buffer yard, not only in the front, but on any sides that are visible from the highway, which typically ends up being 3 sides because of the drive in either direction, you can still see. And these changes were discussed with the applicant and heard at the planning board, and the applicant agrees to those changes. And for those reasons, the staff and the planning board are recommending approval of the text amendment with the staff suggested changes. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board members? If not, yeah, thank you, Jason. Is the applicant here and would wish to speak at all?
There's a representative.
Okay, all right. If you'd
Yeah,
like
but
to
did
speak,
she wish
come on.
to speak?
If you want, yeah, if you'd like to speak at all. If
I
it's
don't
a-
need to speak unless
Okay.
you got questions for me.
Does anybody got any questions for the applicant? If not, okay, thank you. All right, then at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing. And I have one person signed up, that's Kathleen Saunders. If you could please, oh, that's you. Oh, okay, you're good to go then. Okay. Okey-dokey. Anyone else who did not get a chance to sign up for the public hearing on this, that wish to speak on the matter? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And I will ask the board then to take some action on this, if so choose.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve PB 21-08 Truck Accessory Center because the request is consistent with the Land Use Plan Policy ED1, and the request with staff suggested changes is reasonable and in the public interest because, and a Type D buffer yard will provide adequate screening from off-site views.
I'll second his motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? Okay, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next item is PB 21-09, Currituck County 160D. Request to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, and 10 for conformity with the new North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 160D, which consolidates city and county enabling statutes for development regulations into a single unified chapter. And I believe we have Ms. Jenny Turner presenting that this evening.
Before Ms. Turner starts, if I could just address the handouts that came with this. The first is the motion sheet. You'll see that this is representative of the discussions that we had in the work session, which is a little slightly different format. You'll see that item, where it says item 1, and as you continue down, these are actually parts of the text amendment with an area for you all to make notes for your motion, should you choose. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out, you've got another section of papers that is slightly different than what is in the agenda packet. It has a page number on the bottom, for instance, packet page 49. This would actually replace that, and Ms. Turner, I think, will get into those differences as she goes through. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr.
Second.
Stikeweather.
Second, make sure Commissioner Jarvis has this
Hold on,
packet
I've got
right
so
here.
many. Yes, I do.
You got it? Okay, thank you, we're good, okay.
Thank you.
Ready?
Go ahead, yes, we're good now.
Good evening, thank you. So this is a text amendment to the Unified Development Ordinance, and the reason this text amendment is necessary is because the state has adopted new general statutes related to planning and development regulations and an authority given to cities and counties. Back in 2015, the NC Bar Association first introduced this proposal, this 160D proposal, and the purpose was to consolidate and reorganize planning and development regulation statutes with the intent to have a uniform set of statutes applicable to cities and counties and common to all development regulations. So that's what Chapter 160D does. It consolidates, reorganizes, and modernizes the state's planning and development regulation statutes. It repeals the existing statutes that are collected and merged into this new chapter. And the reason is to have a more logical, coherent, and user-friendly organization of those statutes. I have more readable sentence structures and links to replace confusing and legalistic language, and to delete redundant language. There are no major policy changes in the scope of authority granted to local governments. There's clarification and reform of the statutes without making major policy changes. For example, we still have legislative conditional rezoning as a tool. We still have quasi-judicial special use permits as a tool. The language also simplifies planned consistency statements that are required for making those rezoning and text amendment decisions, and it clarifies as reasonableness statements for zoning map amendments. The legislation actually is already in effect, and local governments are required to implement the changes by July 1st of this year. There's kind of been a moving target with COVID and when the legislation was in effect and when it was going to be required to update. But here we are, and we're right on the verge of getting this done in time before July 1st. Again, Chapter 160D consolidates planning and zoning authority given to counties and cities, and it incorporates many, many years of court decisions and case law, interpreting them and codifying them into the statutory general statute language. Unfortunately for us, over the years, thanks to Ike and some of the other planning staff, a lot of these changes have already been incorporated into the ordinance as those cases have come out. The School of Government has been very, very helpful in providing guidance for implementing the 160D with workshops, checklists, and guidance documents, and planning staff has worked with our county attorney, Mr. McCree, to ensure that the language is implemented as required. So before I move into the actual reviewing the proposed text changes, does the board have any questions about the reason these changes are required, the 160D legislation?
I guess not, okay.
So we'll start. You do have a memo that itemizes these changes, and then I'm going to direct you to pages within the agenda packet. We're just going to go through. I didn't really think there was a better way to do that. That's kind of what I just went over there. Forgot to advance that. So we'll just go one by one. So item 1 is on page 23 of your agenda packet. We're updating a general statute reference, amending our auto adoption language for the D-firm panels, the flood insurance studies, and then in section 1.8.5, we're actually striking through conditional use zoning districts. Those are no longer permitted. We don't have any of those. And we're replacing it by adding language that use permits, conditional use permits, and special use permits granted before this text amendment shall become special use permits, to be consistent with that new terminology laid out in 160D. Item 2, page 28 of your packet. Now, there are a few little minor, or few things in this ordinance that are not specific to 160D, and this is one of them. This was actually a board-directed change that we revised the technical review committee recommendation for special use permits and type 2 preliminary plats to the TRC to provide review and comment as opposed to a recommendation. The reason being is those use permits are heard in an evidentiary hearing. It's a quasi-judicial process. I think the board and staff is more comfortable having those findings made in the meeting as opposed to a recommendation prior to the hearing. We also, in item 2, are changing the terminology from use permit to special use permit. There's a lot of that you've probably seen. Page 30 of your packet. We've added this conduct language for the boards, the advisory and decision-making bodies. There's conduct language and conflict of interest standards, and so we've added that language for the Board of Commissioners, the Planning Board, the Board of Adjustment, and also for staff, for the Technical Review Committee and the Planning Director. There's conduct and conflict of interest standards provided in the ordinance. We've also required that the rules of procedure for the Planning Board and Board of Adjustment be posted on the county's website. And again, in this particular section, there's language regarding the change that the Technical Review Committee on page 36 that they will review and provide comment on special use permits and type 2 preliminary plats as opposed to recommending on those. And if you have any questions as we're going through this, feel free to stop me and ask. Page 39 of your packet. This is just the actual special use permit, updating more terminology here from use permit to special use permit. And then under the staff review and action, staff report and recommendation, we've added more language about reviewing and providing comments on those use permits. We've also updated on page 45 of your packet, we've updated the evidentiary hearing cross-examination language for evidentiary hearings. And then another major change to the terminology is that we're not calling it a quasi-judicial public hearing anymore. The terminology is evidentiary hearing. So that's indicative that that's an evidentiary hearing where you are to come and submit competent material, substantial evidence, not hearing opinions, and that's the new terminology in 160D. Ike, feel free to chime in if you want to add anything to what I'm saying. So we did update the cross-examination language. Page 47 of your agenda packet, the text amendment provisions. We've added language about the planning board, that the planning board shall make a written recommendation to this board, and that this board is not bound by a planning board recommendation, and that the minutes of the board of this board should state when a text amendment is heard that the board was aware of and considered the planning board's recommendations and applicable county adopted plans. Page 49, this is going to be your zoning map amendment. These next few under 2.4.2 text amendment, 2.4.3 zoning map amendment, conditional rezoning, and plan development is going to have this similar language that is on the new packet, the new pages that you got. There's some minor changes to that. It includes language about the planning board making a written recommendation and that the board's not bound by that recommendation. It amends the consistency statement language for the board, that when making a decision, the board shall approve a statement of consistency and reasonableness that describes whether the decision is consistent with all county adopted plans that are applicable and explains why the decision is reasonable and in the public interest. When making a statement of reasonableness, the board may consider, among other factors, the size, physical conditions, and other attributes of any area proposed to be rezoned, the benefits and detriments to the landowners, neighbors, and surrounding community, the relationship between the current actual and permissible development and the development permissible under the proposed zoning map amendment, why the action taken is in the public interest, any change conditions warning the amendment. The meeting minutes must state that at the time of the decision, the board was aware of and considered the planning board's recommendations and relevant portions of county plans. And then there's a statement that if a rezoning, so a zoning map amendment, and this language is consistent with the conditional rezoning language as well as the plan development language, which are all rezonings. If the land use plan is deemed amended by that zoning map amendment, then the land use plan amendment shall not be effective until reviewed and approved under the general statute, the CAMA process for updating the CAMA land use plan. Any questions on that? No? Okay. So for a conditional rezoning, in addition to that language that I just read, we're also stating that a conditional rezoning is not effective until the owner and applicant provide written consent to mutually agreed conditions imposed by this board as part of the conditional zoning district. So that's an additional bit of language for conditional rezonings.
Jenny, when we're having this campground discussion, if that language ever gets decided on, would conditional rezoning actually kind of cover the campground language when they come in for conditional zoning permit? This is the section that would apply, right?
That's what you would be doing, would be establishing a conditional rezoning.
Okay.
So this process would apply to those applications. I will mention that I think I skipped over it. There's a lot going on here. I think I skipped over it, but the statement about the written consent, that also applies to special use permits. Special use permits need applicant consent
Right.
to the conditions.
Yeah, both parties have to agree, basically.
Yeah, and sign, actually physically sign. All right, and then plan development, again, is the same rezoning language that I just read, with the same language about if the land use plan is deemed amended by the plan development, the land use plan amendment shall not be effective until reviewed and approved under the process, the general statute process for updating the CAMA land use plan. Yes.
Well, for one thing, the landowner has to sign the application, basically authorizing the applicant, non-landowner applicant, authorizing them to file the application and appear at the public hearing, or appear at the hearing on the matter. Yeah, well, like, again, they've got to be a party to the application.
Thank you. Also, in the conditional rezoning specific review procedures, there's a minor change in terminology, updating the term deviation to modification to be consistent with the 160D language. Under special use permit, again, updating use permit to special use permit, and providing that written consent to board-imposed conditions is required prior to issuance of the special use permit is included. Section 2.4.8, we are on page 60 of your packet. Updating terminology, use permit to special use permit, revising, again, that TRC recommendation to review and comment for type 2 preliminary plats, and updating terminology, deviation, and modification. The next few sections there regarding permits, zoning compliance permit, sign permit, floodplain development permit, and clear cutting permit, there's a default rule that the permits are valid for 12 months unless altered by a state or local rule. So for all of those permits, we're adjusting that time frame from a shorter period to the 1-year time frame. Page 68 of your packet. This is regarding the variance procedure. There's a change to that from quasi-judicial public hearing to evidentiary hearing. Same for appeal. Page 69 of your packet. Change from quasi-judicial public hearing to evidentiary hearing, and from use permit to special use permit. Under development agreement on page 71 of your packet, there's just a change to reference the correct general statute. And then the zoning compliance permit island development is another expiration change on page 73 of your packet to go from 6 months to 1 year. Item 3 is the chapter 3 zoning districts. All those updates are just straight terminology updates from use permit to special use permit. Same with item 4, updating from use permit to special use permit. So we're on page 108 of your packet now. There's a terminology update, but there's also an update that's not 160D related. You may recall you recently heard a text amendment regarding police, fire, and EMS facility, and Commissioner McCord made a statement that it should be corrected to law enforcement, fire, EMS facility. This is changing that in a couple other places here in the ordinance. Item 6, page 111 for subdivision and infrastructure standards, updating general statute references, updating terminology. And then in your performance guarantees section, we're adding the surety bond as a type of form of performance guarantee that's permitted. Item 7 on page 115 of your packet. This is the enforcement, Chapter 9 enforcement. To amend this subsection to provide for electronic delivery email of notices and violations and require notice to be delivered to the permittee if it's different than the owner, and provide for an affidavit affirming that the required notice was given. And then on page 116, remedies and penalties, we're including stop work order language. Yes, sure.
We email somebody, like you said, and I'm sure this will be set up. We email, we'll just say Joe Citizens over there, he's doing something that's a violation. Is that going to be sent where it's a confirmed, like this email, a confirmed receipt, this email's going to open and view by, whatever, is that
Like a red receipt type thing? I'm not sure I'm not sure.
I mean, like I said, say somebody's out of town for 4 days and they don't have the contract.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Just curious, I mean, that's something that language that could be added in there if, we set some kind of an email and he's in Mexico or she's in Mexico, whoever, saying where they have such and such, what's the
How would that be different than sending them a letter where they didn't get it?
The other problem would be what would prevent you from deleting the email and saying I never got it.
Well, you could
It went to spam, or they just.
you can show that it's on our end. So I don't know if that was something. If that's something that could be added on.
It's something we can do procedurally. I don't know if that's put in the ordinance, just because so many times we're not getting down to an issue of 3 or 4 days. It's these violations on a
ongoing.
The only thing that guarantees is that somebody read it. Doesn't mean the person read it.
All right.
So under remedies and penalties, including stop work order language, providing for an affidavit affirming required notice, and revising the revocation language and updating use permit to special use permit. Item 8, this is page 119 in chapter 10 of the ordinance definitions and measurement. We're going to be adding terminology, or amending the terminology, again, to law enforcement, fire, EMS facility, and then amending the definitions of appeal, existing development, planning director, type 2 preliminary plat, and variance, and provide new definitions for close familial relationship that's related to those conduct and conflict of interest standards that were inserted into the ordinance. Commissioner, evidentiary hearing, quasi-judicial hearing, or decision rather, special use permit, and to delete the definitions of quasi-judicial public hearing because those are going to be evidentiary hearings, and use permit because that's becoming a special use permit. And then item 9, this is not necessarily a 160D change, but it's my understanding there are changes to be made to the current Planning and Community Development Department, and so there's changes here proposed to update the term Planning Director to Director, and update Planning and Community Development Department and Department of Planning and Community Development, wherever that's referenced in the ordinance, to Development Services Department. Any questions or anything you want to look at closer? No? All right. These are the text amendment review standards currently in the ordinance. And staff does recommend approval of this text amendment because the request as submitted is consistent with the 2006 land use plan, including land use and development goal number 10 to properly distribute development forms in accordance with the suitability of land infrastructure available and the compatibility of surrounding land uses. And the request is reasonable and in the public interest because it amends the ordinance for consistency with North Carolina general statutes, and staff and the planning board recommend approval. I would just make a comment that if you are proposing to make a motion for this text amendment, that you include the staff revisions that were given to you this evening.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Turner. Any questions from the board at this time?
And the revisions cover this as well as the paperclip second piece that you showed, right?
Yes. Commissioner McCord brought up a good point. Does this language match the proposed definition of recreational vehicle that Lori briefed? Or are we
There's no
gonna?
proposed.
You mean from the, when we're talking about campgrounds and that?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any proposed change to that definition.
Well, did your change?
Yeah, her proposed text amendment that was
Mirrors
something
this.
That's the same. There's no changes to the definition of RV.
That's fine.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Maybe this is correct from the county. Does this change in 160D weaken the county's position to control development?
I don't think 160D does that. As Ms. Turner mentioned in the opening, it was two major points, which was to combine Chapter 160A and Chapter 153A of the general statute that related to the authority of cities and counties to zone and regulate land use. It was becoming complicated. For example, in 153A, the county chapter, you would find the provision that a board of adjustment could be created by a board of county commissioners, but you went over to Chapter 160A to find most of the process that a board of adjustment was to follow. And then the second major point was to take, again, case law, that is law created by the courts over many decades, interpreting these two chapters and codifying them into statutory language. So we've always had in the past to quote case law for principles and premises of land use regulation, and now they're within a statute and now being placed into ordinance language. So no, I don't think this takes away the authority or weakens the authority of cities and counties to regulate land use zoning, but certainly, as we know, pending matters before the General Assembly are doing that.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and now open up the public hearing for BB 2909. I have no one signed up to speak on this. Is there anyone in the audience that didn't get a chance to sign up would like to speak on this? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and ask this board for some action on this.
Mr. Chairman, if no further comments from the board, I'll make a motion this evening. I'll move to approve PB 21-09 because the request is consistent with the land use development goal number 10 of the 2006 land use plan, and the request is reasonable and in the public interest because it amends the UDO for compliance with North Carolina general statutes. Item 1, amend Chapter 1 general provisions to update GS reference to 160D, amend auto adoption language for D-firm panels and FIS studies, remove conditional...
Commissioner White, you don't have to read
Oh, good. Thank you, Lord.
all that.
All right.
I'm going to stop you.
All right. Okay. Everything
But
included in here?
One question. Did you want to also adopt the staff recommended changes?
Yes, I had that at the end of all these,
Okay.
this diatribe to do. So, okay, well then, with all the items presented to us this evening, and to include the staff changes as presented to us this evening in our handout.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second from Commissioner Etheridge. Any further discussion on this? If not, I'm sorry, we're in the middle of a motion. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. All right, well, I mean, if you got a question, go ahead. I mean, we've already in the middle, we had the public hearing piece of it there, so I asked for anybody to come up.
I'm sorry, I was meeting my parents here late after the gym. So,
Please come on up to the microphone.
excuse my
All right, and is it appropriate, I mean, well, it's already been closed. I mean, let's just speak for a minute, but public comment's been closed on it, but go ahead.
So my question is, goal 10, to properly distribute development forms in accordance with the suitability of land infrastructure available and the compatibility of surrounding land. Who's determining the compatibility of surrounding land? In regards to the new school being built on Tolls Creek, our land where we live is not going to be compatible with the new school that will be built. I've lived there for 10 years, and I've seen the flooding and the damages without school and without trucks.
If you would like, since like I said, we've already taken action on this, we could have planning get with you after, maybe tomorrow, the next day, speak with you on this. If that's doable, we'll get your information and we'll have staff contact you and go over that and explain that further for you if you could.
Okay, yes, sir. That's just more for my parents.
No, and that's fine if we could, because again, we've already taken action on this item here. So before you leave, if you could make sure you get your name, and if you want to go ahead and state that and the address really quick for the record, we'll put that in real quick. And what was your name again?
Carly Martinet,
And your address is?
172 Old Drury Road.
Okay, thank you. And if we'll make sure staff or somebody reaches out to you then probably the next day or so and go over that with you and get your questions answered.
Okay, would you like my email or?
We can get that.
I don't think we need to get out to the whole
If you
world.
broadcast it on
Yeah,
TV,
I
everyone
don't want.
will have your email.
If you would, real quick, get with Lori Lasiso real quick, and then we'll get that to you. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before we jump on, I would like to make one comment, and you did raise an interesting point, and maybe it just provided, you guys didn't have the ability to see what we were looking at tonight, but when we amend these things or a project comes forward, that special use permit that kept being brought up tonight, when they come in to do that, part of that process is they have to have an expert witness come in and testify that these things work in the surrounding area. They conform with the things that are around them. And that's part of that quasi-judicial process or an evidentiary hearing that we hear. It is much different when they come up to us for different things, depending on what it is and how that information is presented to us as a board. So just for those that are watching tonight or maybe in the room tonight, it's just it's a very in-depth process. It's not an arbitrary thing that we decide.
Just another point to that. The law provides that any time that a use is permitted in a zoning district, even as a special use, it is deemed to be in harmony or compatible with all the other uses within that zoning district. And so therefore, you would have to make a finding in that instance that it is. Again, by virtue of the fact that it is permitted as a use.
Okay. All right, thank you. The next item on public hearings is going to be public hearing and action consideration of expansion of the Moyock Township Watershed Improvement Service District. And with that, I believe we have...
It'll be myself, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. County Manager, you're up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So it's important to understand that the request before you tonight is one phase of a multi-phased approach the county is going through to try to address stormwater issues. We've had conversations in the past about working on a text amendment to change how development actually models stormwater upstream and downstream. That's not part of this, but it's important to understand that there's a lot of things going on at one time to try to make an impact on stormwater. This issue has been around for quite a while. I know it was examined 4 or 5 years ago about taking the watershed area that is in the Moyock Township minus Gibbs Woods and essentially making it one large service district. The reason for doing that is that by and large, all of the water that flows in the Moyock Township flows to just a couple of places, Tolls Creek, Shingle Landing Creek, and it eventually ends up in Tolls Bay. So we've had conversations at the winter retreat. If you remember, the Soil and Water Board came. We discussed about an option would be to do some studies to the watershed area and try to figure out what projects would maybe make the most sense from an engineering standpoint. As we walked through that, the Soil and Water Board pointed out that they have a considerable amount of knowledge in that area. The idea being that people who've worked the land and farmers who've been around the land for a long time know how that land flows and where the traditional waterways are in that township in particular. And so it was decided that what we would do is expand the township, keep it at a very reasonable tax rate, try to generate some revenue similar to some of the revenues that we saw come in with the hurricane relief money that saw some really positive impacts to the community as it worked through outfalls and these major historic drainage ways. And it's important when we talk about that, that's the map that you've seen several times, that are these waterways that were mapped originally by Mike Doxey. Gosh, that was probably 15 years ago, I think now. And so the focus of this district is going to be to take that work that's occurred in the Moyock district and in the Guinea Mill district, and for right now in the Northwest district, but I'll get to that in just a second, and to take that work and expand it out so that we can really focus on some of these outfalls where you can see some real benefit to the entire area. And an example of that was actually done by a development that's going in, but as we've talked about, the ditch and the landing where they cleaned out, in that case, vehicles and refrigerators and appliances out of the ditch, really helped to make some improvements on some of the areas that flowed into it. Our hope is that by using the revenue generated by this larger district, we can start to focus on those outfalls and really make a larger impact for the community as a whole. I want to address a couple of things that have already come up tonight, just so that folks, to put their mind at ease a little bit. The money that was generated inside of the old service districts would stay in a fund for those service districts, and we will spend that money down. That money could only be spent within the boundaries of the old service districts. One issue that staff has recognized, and it's the reason that you've got a separate map in front of you tonight, the Northwest watershed does not flow to those same locations. It is a smaller group of landowners. And so we feel like at the staff level, it would be very appropriate to adopt a service district that meets MAP, which is option B that you have, which basically does not include the Northwest Watershed Improvement Service District as part of this service district. The reason for that is these improvements we're going to make on these major drainage ways and outfalls outside of the Northwest district really won't have any impact on the inside of that district. And taking this district out doesn't make any major impact to the revenue that you see. That Northwest district generates roughly $2,700 a year. And so it's not really enough to make a difference. And so we feel like they could stand alone as their own district going forward. So as we go through a little bit more of this, keep in mind that what I'm going to be speaking of tonight is basically what I'd recommend is option B, where the Northwest district is not included in this whole township solution, just because of the direction that it flows. It actually flows into Virginia as opposed as flowing to the east.
If I may, was it originally going to be in?
It was, but as we looked at it and examined it a little more, it just didn't make as much sense to put that one in. But like I said, it won't see the benefit. I think that there potentially could be benefits for the folks in that district because there would be more revenue that could be used, but the reality is the priorities are going to exist at the outfalls in these major drainage ditches where we see backups currently. And I think that there would probably be some concern from the property owners that they would get lost in the shuffle a little bit. So it makes sense to keep them their own district.
And their water does not impact what we're talking about.
Correct. It's a different watershed area. It flows into, I forget the body of water, but it actually flows north.
River
Yeah.
into Virginia.
So like I said, the purpose of this is to work on those outfalls, major drainage ways. We don't have to get into the details tonight. I would recommend actually let's have maybe like a work session or something to talk to the advisory board. But what I will tell you, my recommendation right now as the manager for the advisory board for this would be to include the soil and water supervisors on the advisory board, which gives you folks who have got some training and expertise and knowledge of the land on that advisory board, going back generationally in some cases. And then also including 2 to 3 residents. I wouldn't include any more than that from the different areas. And if you wanted to, you could include 2 residents, one being from each of the watersheds, meaning maybe one Shingle Creek, one Tolls Creek, or one Guinea Mill, one current Moyock district. As you all know, we always have a challenge keeping those advisory boards fully staffed. You heard that from the comments earlier tonight. I think having it be the soil and water supervisors, though, gives you people that you could tap just my recommendation. We don't have to make that decision tonight. Tonight is about the adoption of, or adopting a resolution to expand this district to give it more revenue power so that we can essentially do some larger projects akin to the snagging and clearing that you saw done through the soil and water staff with the money that came from Hurricane Dorian and Matthew over the last couple of years, which has really paid dividends across different parts of the county. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Just to be clear, the gentleman that came up earlier on the public comment early in the meeting was talking about his particular ditch. We're not trying to clean out every single ditch. This is really about the biggest impact areas, right?
Yeah,
Going downstream and.
Yeah, so we're going to ask, that Soil and Water Board, along with some citizens, to set these priorities. In my mind, the way that this process works, they set priorities at the start of every budget year or slightly before the budget year. We immediately hit new budget year in July. We go out to bid, which we would need to go out to bid to get the best price on this work. And then we do whatever we can afford to do within the course of that year. Some years we'll be able to do more. Some years we'll be able to do less. It all depends on what the charge is from the contractors that are doing that kind of work. I can tell you that we've had pretty competitive rates with Soil and Water where they've been handling that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It is not going to clean roadside ditches because that is actually DOT's jurisdiction. So if it's a state-maintained road, we cannot get into that.
Can I say, too, when he spoke earlier, as far as the cleaning of the ditches, and we have that program, but as far as almost 21 years, I don't ever remember the sheriff's office owning any weed eaters. I mean, we snag and clean trashes out of the ditches. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, in that program, I mean, COVID kind of kicked that to the side for a little while, but that's going to kick back off. But, I mean, like I said,
Well, and the other thing is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner McCord, when it comes to inmate labor, you can't force an inmate to go out anymore. They have to volunteer to go out, and sometimes they do. Yeah.
criteria and all that stuff. I mean, like, some of them can only wash cars, some of them can only,
Yeah.
and some of them are lazy.
And I don't think
put
you're
it bluntly.
supposed to
So-
give them tea, are you?
So let's talk through, Commissioner White, your question. So we're talking about roadside ditches are off the table.
Mm-hmm.
This is not intended to clean ditches that fall under the purview of an HOA, unless that ditch is a major ditch that benefits the broader community. So we've got two kinds of ditches within subdivisions right now. We've got ditches that are their internal stormwater system to keep water in the subdivision. That's not what we're talking about. There are subdivisions that have major ditches that run through them. In those cases, those ditches could potentially be cleaned with some of these funds. But we would start with the major outfalls in the beginning.
And so I can see the question coming that, well, I don't have a problem in my neighborhood, and some of the newer neighborhoods, that's probably true, but your water has to go somewhere, and it eventually is going to leave your neighborhood and impact these ditches, and that's a big part of why this is being looked at expanding. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, the fact is, if you are the high point in the watershed, which in Currituck County that means 7 or 8 feet above sea level in some cases, then yeah, you don't see the impact of that rain. But the person who's sitting 2 feet above sea level does see it. And so it's not a perfect plan. You're not going to see success overnight. This is a very measured approach to try to limit the impact on the taxpayers of the county. The folks who are within the current districts will see either the same tax rate or it'll actually go down for some of them. And so you're seeing roughly $0.015 of tax on the folks who aren't currently in a district.
Thank you.
I'd like to add that this is nothing new in North Carolina. The county of Camden has had that's in a complete watershed district. Everybody's in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is very common throughout, especially lower lying coastal communities. But
And it's in a direct response to the number of complaints we get up here, as we've seen from the folks at Old Jerry Road. They brought to light some of the deficiencies we have in our own stormwater management plan, and looking at Camden and other areas, what they did to look upstream to see how a new neighborhood is going to impact someone else. So this has been a very, the 4.5 years I've been here, we've been talking about it, and long before I got here. So
Yeah, we're not reinventing the wheel.
right.
Is that all you have, Cameron?
yes, sir, unless anybody else has any other questions.
Other questions? If not, we have quite a few signed up for public hearing, and we'll get started. I'll open public hearing for the expansion of the Moyock Township Watershed Improvement District, and I'll start with, I know Myra Frazier got up and spoke to public comment. She was on the list here.
She's gone.
Is she still here, or she's left? Okay. Okay. Next I have, who is it, Paul Imholt? If you could, when you come up, if you could please state your name and address for the record before you start, I'd be grateful.
Good evening. My name is Paul Inholt. I live at 112 Trout Street in Tulls Bay Colony. Thank you for clearing up a lot of those misconceptions. But my questions were how the public notice was written. As a rapidly developing area of the county, Moyock Township continues its transformation from a rural farming community to a more urbanized area. So my question was not addressed earlier. So why wasn't the watershed issue not incorporated with any new subdivisions that were mentioned in the public hearing notice?
I mean, if you want, I mean, it's up to the board. I can address that question. You know, I think the board does address drainage whenever subdivisions come through. Quite often, they put conditions on new subdivisions that come through to address drainage. Especially some of the larger ones, have had to make some major drainage improvements. So this isn't necessarily to look inside of those subdivisions, and that's what I was kind of getting at. The funds generated in this district would not be to help those internal ditches for those subdivisions. It's to help those outfalls, and if they have a major drainage way at some point in the future. It probably wouldn't be anytime soon. But actually, some of the subdivisions that have come through have placed conditions that designate that they will keep those major drainage ways clean in perpetuity. So
the new subdevelopments and their stormwater runoff resulting in more frequent occurrence and nuisance and damaging flooding does not apply, or it does?
So the issue is that as the subdivisions generate water, they're required to release them at a specific rate. And if the county engineer was here, he could tell you exactly what that rate is. I always get mixed up on what it is, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But as we see more subdivisions come in, the ditches, the issue is that the ditches are becoming overgrown, and these outfalls, the subdivision is only putting out the same amount of water, but the issue is that these outfalls have not been maintained. And so if we don't maintain those outfalls, I'm going to give you a little bit more background than you've asked for. Right now, the design criteria for subdivisions was based on a study that was done that said that the ditches in Currituck County could roughly hold this rain event every so often. And so as we've not maintained those outfalls, they can't handle that same level that the standard was set at. So by maintaining those outfalls, it should get us back to where that standard that's set should be the correct standard. Does that make sense?
So does that standard account for new subdivisions?
New subdivisions do have to meet that standard.
Okay. If part of this is new home related, why not impose a similar fee to the highway use tax for individual property transactions?
We have a transfer tax for individual property transactions that can only be used on capital projects. Most of these projects will be considered service projects because it's snagging and clearing. There are certain requirements that counties in North Carolina used to have the ability to charge what were called impact fees, so that if you knew that a subdivision was going to come in and you wanted to account for schools or you wanted to account for drainage, you used to be able to charge those fees, but the General Assembly actually took that authority away from counties. 5-6 years ago, maybe more now.
I think, Mr. Steinquist, one of the things that's, while we may not actually charge the neighborhood or the developer for building it, each person now that builds a home is going to pay into this tax district. So every single new home that's added, you're having another person paying that 1.5 cent evaluation for their property. So they are actually contributing to the overall picture as time goes on.
And unaffected people that live on the water?
Well, everybody's affected. Your water goes somewhere. It has to
into
shed.
the Northwest River.
Well, it has to go somewhere. No matter where you live in this watershed district, your water's leaving your property and impacting it, other than the guy maybe that lives right on the sound. So there's a very few properties that don't have water impacting a ditch somewhere that is a drainage way.
Do you know if the area between Dolphin Street and Pointers, the bridge, will be addressed? Because that floods terribly.
It's terrible. It's probably one of the lowest parts in the county.
That'll be
So
the
does the-
advisory boards and soil and water supervisors to determine which ones are most pressing, correct?
Yes, and I'm going to speak a little out of turn because I think probably the solution there is not a clearing of a drainage way. It's probably DOT making some improvements to the roadway. If it's what I'm thinking of, you're talking about right there on the north side of the bridge as you come
That
off.
little bridge when you come over, yeah.
It needs
Right.
to
Talking
be
about the
drained.
east side of the bridge, probably closer to.
Or I say
Gulfstreet
north, but
Road.
yeah.
East side, where it always floods.
Yeah.
By the boat ramp and all that stuff.
Correct.
So I mean, I don't know that this would solve that problem. Actually, as when you heard the talk about DOT earlier,
Right.
Probably what's needed is to actually raise the road bed there. But if there's some way after we get and set priorities that we can make an improvement,
So
and that
we-
obviously floods quite a bit. So
And I think that's a DOT.
it seems like it to me.
Yeah, it's just the road. It's
And that's affected too by the tides too, not just the rain.
Yeah.
So it's like earth, and the wind.
Yeah, I know in my lifetime, you go by there now, you can see land out there where they actually dug the canal on either side and built a road bed. Years ago, you never saw any land, but it's silted in, and the carrying capacity has been diminished.
okay.
Those were all my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, next I have is a Joseph F. Hobbs.
Oh.
How are y'all tonight? Those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Hobbs with the Health Department here in Currituck. Reason I came here, I'm taking my hat off as a county servant, and this is a personal issue because I live on Northwest Backwoods Road, and with your letter that was written, I was under the impression that that part of the drainage was going to go with the whole, but now you're telling me that you're going to keep it the same as it has been.
Yeah,
So-
the original intent was to include it, but my recommendation tonight is not to.
and that's what I was here to let y'all know, and I knew you knew it, but the drainage doesn't go to the Currituck Sound, it goes to Northwest River in Virginia. So, I was at one time on that board for a small period of time, and we have been paying taxes down that road on South Mills Road and Northwest Backwoods Road for years. I don't know how much money have they accumulated through the years? We got something like, what'd you say, $38,000 or something?
The balance is 38,000.
And so that money will go toward,
Just
because
you.
there are some definitely issues when it comes to drainage on that road, and especially those newer subdivisions. There's about 4 or 5 houses close to Carolina Village that when it rains, that whole area just floods. And these are brand new homes, so that needs to be addressed. And at the end of the intersection of South Mills Road and Northwest Backwoods Road, that area floods bad. I mean, and that they are all new subdivisions that were really never, as far as storm drainage, were never done properly. So all I'm asking is that hopefully y'all can look at that and correct those drainage issues, because they definitely need to be corrected. But as far as, I just want to let y'all know about those places. And like I say, I don't know if there is still a board. Is there still a board? Is still that board?
A board exists. Is it active?
Do you remember that board that was on at one time?
Yeah.
A lot of the
I
people
knew
that
you
were on that
were
were
on it.
are deceased now, but yeah.
Well, you've outlived them, Joe.
I won't say it. But anyway, well, I'm just here to clarify, and I'm glad y'all decided to do that, to keep that off as a separate drainage area to look at with the rest of the MOYOC. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Mr. Hobbs.
Okay, thank you.
All right, next.
Mr. Chairman,
I'm going to use that as kind of a real quick. Most folks are aware that some areas of Currituck are lower than others. FEMA updated the flood maps
2 years ago now.
2 years ago now. So a lot of the areas that used to flood, that still flood, FEMA no longer considers part of the flood zone. Therefore, you have the option to drop your flood insurance. What happened is if your property came out of the flood zone, you can actually now get flood insurance significantly cheaper than you could have back when you were in the flood zone. If your property even has a dream of flooding, and I'll use mine as an example. Yeah, I'm kind of in the flood zone, but we really didn't have a problem. I had about a $30,000 flood claim going back to Hurricane Matthew, and it was incestuous in that it actually came from the ground up to the subflooring. So everyone thinks flooding and your couch is bobbing around in the living room. That's not the only thing that can happen during. That's not funny, man.
Well, it was kind of funny.
But the point is, if you can get flood insurance and there's even a remote chance of your house flooding, it is a lifesaver and it is a wise investment. Anyway, that PSA was brought to you by
my family.
Thank you. All right, next on the public hearing, I have a Chad Winborn.
Not here.
Chad here? Okay. Seeing no Chad, okay, checking that off.
Oh, wait, there he is.
Oh, we do, okay, I'm sorry. Did not see. Oh, yes, sir, come on up. Again, if you remember, just if you could state your name and address for the records. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chad Winborn, 103 Kobe Street, Milliock. And I was very concerned, which many of us, I'll probably direct my question to your office. We're looking at this watershed, the new watershed, and we're all here in Tulsa Bay Colony, and we're very concerned about all this water coming, basically all the way from South Mills, all the way our way, and flooding us out, basically. So, any studies on that, or this is very vague what we're seeing?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about was some kind of study. What was kind of talked about at the retreat was that we would focus on the outfalls to try to improve that flow of water that eventually does make its way into Tolls Bay. The challenge, and you guys that live in Tolls Bay Colony know this better than anybody else, the challenge that we have there probably isn't so much the rainwater. I mean, it definitely has an impact, but it's the winds. I mean, if the wind's blowing out of the wrong direction.
So we get all this storm water and a south wind, we're definitely going to flood out then. This is going to triple our water.
Well, the thing to keep in mind, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, the subdivisions that we're talking about that are creating runoff, they have to hold a certain amount of water and discharge it at a rate no greater than the rate that it would have discharged when it was a wooded land. And so, in theory, I mean, the study that I was referring to that says that our ditches can handle this, if those systems are working properly and the study is accurate, when the ditches are even brought up to where the water flows better through the ditch system, it should be able to handle it and should not cause any negative impact, according to the study that was done many years ago.
Many years ago. We've got a lot more houses and a lot more land now being diverted this way, all through the northwest, all which go right here into Tolls Bay, both paths. I'm looking at Tolls Bay Colony, Beechwood Shores, even over towards Gibbs Woods, Old Tills Creek Road. They flood over just when we get a rain. We're looking at Pointers Road, they're going to be flooded over. All these estuaries are going right there. The areas we're already having issues. That's what we are using as estuary, not already flooded areas. So we've got a lot more water coming right there. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Winborn. Next I have is Pam Phelps.
You've already answered my question.
Okay, thank you, Pam. Okay, next I have a Raymond Farmer.
My name is Raven Farmer, and I also live in Tulsa Bay Colony. I have a couple of properties there. So I think you answered some of my questions already, just talking about how you kind of like in the beginning stage of this maybe. What just made you decide to create this watershed? And don't tell me it's because of big new neighborhoods. Because we have existing water problems for past 21 years I've been here.
We've been talking about creating this watershed district, at least the 4.5 years I've been here as a commissioner.
7.
And 7. So this has been a long, ongoing discussion. We hear you guys come up all the time that live in Moyock, see it on Facebook, all the pictures are posted, all the complaints. And so, the board finally decided that, at least at a minimum, we can address some of the issues through these outfalls, which is the big thing. Was it Guinea Mill where they cleaned out the car and you can see when you drive by that ditch now, the water level is considerably lower, and it was just obstructions causing the issue. So for us, we just looked at the whole area of Moyock. All of it is infected in some way, shape, or form by water, whether it's rain, storms, whatever it may be, and really wanted to do something that would be meaningful and help this process out and getting the water out of there. Are you still going to flood? Probably from time to time. There's nothing we can do about that. But is the impact reduced or the length of flooding reduced? And that's really what we're trying to do is lessen those impacts as much as we can and further reduce those times. So when we have a storm, you don't have water stacked up for 5 or 7 days afterwards. It's maybe out in 48 hours afterwards. So that's how we got here. It's just really responding to the complaints of the people that live there that are having to deal with these issues.
And the other thing that the county succeeded in doing the year before the COVID, whatever, was in the past, the DOT did not specify funding for their road ditch maintenance. And we worked together with our regional board and had that language changed so that if DOT ever gets money again, so everybody please go drive. Some of those funds can be used to clean out ditches that historically DOT have not had an obligation or a desire to do so. So at least now that language is in the language of how DOT operates to be able to take care of that.
Will this advisory board set priorities for what gets accomplished first?
Yes.
And do y'all have any guidance that they would use to go by? Or is it just...
First, you got to identify the problems.
What's that?
First, they have to identify the problem areas, and then the guidance will come into play. The county manager has spoken to the release of water. What that is designed to do is no more water post-development than pre-development. That's the basic foundation of it, is to retain that water on site and release it at the same rate it was doing before the development was ever built.
Okay.
The other focus of the group is biggest bang for the buck. So where the greatest constraint is for water leaving the area, that will get the first focus, right? And at the end of the day, water always fell on Currituck County, and water mostly all went to the same location in Currituck County. All we're trying to do with these boards, and part of what the action that this board has undertaken, is to get it to that body of water as fast as possible and get it out of the area and get it, where, because the sound can absorb an incredible amount of water. And I certainly appreciate a south or whatever I can never remember which wind it is, but anytime the wind's blowing from the south, East Ridge Road will go under a foot or more of water. And that doesn't have to do, the worst flooding that road has ever seen had nothing to do with rain.
And Pointers is the same way sometimes. Yep. The other thing too, like they stated before, we had major problems off of Baxter, and it was something that was before I was on this board.
It was the Landing subdivision.
Yeah, it was something that was already approved, and then it went between some family swaps and all kinds of different stuff. And like I said, there was a clog on that ditch, and we knew there was a clog. I knew there was a truck and a car and some appliances in there, and the developer didn't know it. Neither did his engineer, and they agreed to remove anything in those ditches, and they did. And there's not I mean, I would say their drainage probably improved 75%.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, you can see it driving by.
You could never see it before. And that
So,
cost
and that's something else to point out. Several of our developers that have come forward now are engaged in the process of helping get these ditches cleaned out, even downstream stuff they don't have to do. They've gone in and cleaned out, in one case, all the way down from their subdivision, got permission from the landowners to come on their property to clean these ditches out. So we also have some developers that are engaged in the process and willing to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. That's encouraging to
the
see.
snag and clear work too that's done where the county picks what's the word, pick with the soil and water.
The soil and water and Dylan Lloyd there, the soil and water technician has worked to identify certain areas.
Major problem areas, which they do the snag. I mean, just like I said, just
Snagging and clearing.
trash and a mattress in the thing where it's going to block water.
And I'm just going to add, we keep talking about the northern part of the county, Moyock. Yes, I agree. But I grew up in Grandy area, the southern part, and I still live there. There's major flooding issues in the lower end of the county too. So this is just a start. This is going to, the whole county is going to have to be addressed here at some point, and it's just a starting point. The last few rains we had last week, I mean, I live in a development that was done back in 2006, and half my yard was flooded. The main ditch behind my house was overflown, and I went look. I mean, it's just the ditches. I mean, it's all over the county. We have
Gibbs
problems.
Woods.
So yes, this is a start, but the lower end of the county has just as many drainage issues that we're going to eventually have to start
Corolla
attacking those
does,
ditches
too.
too.
Corolla.
So it's affecting the whole county. We're just starting at this point right here with this one. So I just wanted to throw that in, living down there. So.
Thank you.
Good point.
Appreciate that. Time's ticking.
Oh, yep, yes, thank you. I appreciate them. So
Good discussion.
Yes,
My
yes.
next question is, you mentioned the focus areas would be where the water would drain out to main bodies of water. Is that what you were saying? That would be your focus?
It's
For the
wherever it may be close to the sound. It could be the car, the camper, the 30 tires in the ditch. That may be it. Soil conservation does a great job. They know just about all the problem
choke points.
areas.
That's my next question. So if soil conservation will be involved, do you guys already know where those areas are in Moyac where the water, I can't remember the term you use.
Outfalls.
Outfalls.
There you go. Are those already identified?
I'm going to look at the back of the room and
Yep.
see if they nod, if Dylan and them
Yeah.
have an idea.
They're
Y'all know where
sort
they
of
are,
nodding.
Yeah.
There's your
You know,
soil.
good, okay.
That's the guys back there you want to talk to, right?
So then I do want to get a list of those already identified outfalls. That's possible.
The problem areas, you mean, where potentially there are projects? Yeah, we can work. If you will, I'm trying to think of the best way, but yes, you write down on a piece of
Yeah, I
paper.
got a piece of paper. I have to let
Okay.
it pass out. Do that right there.
Okay.
The next question is, so you mentioned earlier when someone else up here was talking about how the rate of water flow through the ditches is supposed to be equal to what the land was before, right? So I've been in Tulsa Bay Colony 21 years, and with the paving of Rocky Top Road into Carolina Highlands, that's extremely restricted the water flow on all the water that flows from North Tulsa Creek Road out into, what is that, Rollin Creek or whatever the creek that goes over the underneath the bridge. So that still is an issue. Like what this last week with the rain, it was 3 days before you could actually drive through the road or into people's driveways without standing water. How does that affect emergency services? Will emergency services respond to my house if I've got knee-deep water in there for 3 to 4 days?
We got SUVs and we got.
The answer I'll say is
Yes.
emergency services will be there.
They'll make it.
Yeah.
Okay. And also advisory board too, you said you might want residents from certain areas, so I would definitely be willing to consider volunteering for that.
There's an application that you can fill out and get with the clerk. So
Okay. Online. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next we had was Beverly, is it Gordon? Okay, all right, thank you. Then we had Coy and Gina Adams.
Good evening. I'm Coy Adams. I live at 207 Surfscouter Loop in Creekside Estates. My concern is how we can get a waiver from the North Carolina Department of Transportation to put a culvert into our ditches to allow adequate flow and also to keep a swell to compensate for any rainwater. What we're having right now in our neighborhood, and it's affecting several of our residents, is a lot of the yards are washing into the ditches, filling them up, restricting the water flow. And so that if we were to clean that out, put culverts in, and then still allow a swell into the yard for any type of overflow. We've done some research on this. We've talked with several engineers. They said that there's a mandate that has to be a 16-foot clean out, or a clean out every 16 feet within that culvert. And all the residents that are affected by this are willing to do this at the cost of themselves. But what we keep running into is a mandate from the NCDOT saying that when the builder built it, it was to compensate for the small retention ponds that they have. So the large ditches compensate for a small retention pond, which coincides with the water runoff. So my question is, how can we get around that red tape? And we're just trying to close in our ditches.
How?
I've talked to Reggie about that, and we've had multiple conversations as well as text messages and stuff. I mean, there is ways to do it, and like he said, it's on their dime. There's some of those ditches in there. There's one or two of them in my company. We weed eat that. I mean, you can't see the person.
Yeah.
They're that deep.
And
They're
I
as
think
tall as I am.
If you if you tell DOT that you're going to pay for it, I think that kind of.
I've done that several times, and I've talked to Kevin.
Have you applied for an encroachment agreement?
Yes, sir. When I was on the board of directors, we did a detachment from encroachment for the roadside for the homeowners, and we were able to do that. They said that there's another detachment of encroachment in between the two property owners of the homeowners, but that's up to the homeowners to submit those type of detachments. We did the one for the entire neighborhood just so that we could take the lay down areas back from the builders for the homeowners. They wouldn't lose any of their property. When we did that, we were told that the ditches were ours, but we couldn't do anything with them because they were owned by the NCDOT.
So part of what it sounds like, those ditches, you said that the BMPs were not the retention ponds, that the ditches are part of the water retention capability of that neighborhood.
Correct.
That's all permitted, and I'm going to look for a nod, yay or nay, from the back of the room by those that shall remain unnamed. But I believe that that's under a state DEQ permit.
State stormwater permit. It
Yeah,
could be.
so that's a little more complicated than just DOT. So
You can amend the stormwater permit.
yes.
But you'd have to make sure you could meet all of their regulations and all county regulations when the subdivision was created. And what you would probably need, it sounds like you even talked to some engineers, is engineers to actually design and show calculations that you're still got a way to retain that water.
Right. So the other question to that, if everyone in the neighborhood doesn't put culverts in, would that affect the engineering aspect of it?
I'm out of my element.
Mm-hmm. Don't know.
Get an engineer to answer that question.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, but I'm out of my
I would think
element.
so as well. But
Yeah.
I know the majority of the neighbors, especially the ones that have the deepest part of the ditches, which is on the northern side closest to Single Landing Creek, they're all willing to fork out the money for it. Because everybody's aging and
They're
they
maintenance
just,
nightmares, I can
they
attest.
are maintenance nightmares.
And see, that's good to hear because we've got ditches in Moyock where we don't have easements to go in and clean them out because people will not allow you to cross their yards.
So while not necessarily related to this, I would think maybe start with an engineer and see about how you amend that state stormwater permit.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Signed up is Harvey Roberts.
That's a $20 fine.
All right, my name is Harvey Roberts. I live in the Shawburg community. I wanted to speak tonight to let the people know I'm 68 years old. I've been a farmer for 49 years, and farmers depend on drainage. We have to have drainage to make a living. The old people, and I now at my age, I've seen it too. Dry weather, we're scared to death, but too much excessive rain will bankrupt you, put you out of business. So been a farmer. I farmed in Camden County, in the Shawburg community, all the way to Barco, and in Moyock. I was up to Moyock 18 years, Tulls Creek Road, near the Jury Road. And all farmers in Currituck County, our livelihood depends upon drainage, and we have to have drainage. And I'd just like for the people to know there's some areas in the county, there's some subdivisions were put in years ago that should never been allowed, and we have low land in Currituck County, and a lot of these subdivisions experience flooding due to tide water. It's the wind and tide water comes in like on East Ridge Road, and I'm not going to get too specific, but outlets are critical. You have to be able to clean the outlet out, and Currituck County doesn't have money to do clearing and snagging, and our soil and water, the only time we get any money in Currituck County for clearing and snagging is if there's a major hurricane. The governor has to declare us emergency. And last year, if you remember, or year before last, one of the hurricanes, President Trump, the federal people declared 10 counties in northeastern North Carolina disaster money. We've never got federal money before, just state. And the soil and water people, we only normally get maybe 10, 15, 20, 30,000. But in my lifetime, the weather is changing. We're seeing more extremes of dry weather. We're seeing more extremes of wet weather, just like this past weekend. We had 5.5 inches of rain at one time. That doesn't normally happen. But anyway, to answer people's questions, the only time there's money available to do any clearing and snagging if you're declared a state or federal disaster area. This past 2021, because we had two hurricanes and a tropical storm, and they were slow releasing the money, we finally got $219,000 here in Currituck County. And the soil and water supervisors, we used that money to clean out 36 different ditches, outlets, throughout the county, all over the county. And this clearing and snagging money can only be used where you can't use heavy equipment. Men have to physically go in there with chainsaws and winches and pull it out. So that's where clearing and snagging. We don't go on high land. We can only go in swamp lands, and the work has to be done manually. In the past 2 years, like I said, we've done $219,000 of work on 36 ditches. And there's more work that needs to be done. If we could have these, I know Moyock Drainage District has done an outstanding job on, and farmers, any farmer, I know we got Melvin Evans up here, he was a farmer. We know where the water goes. And the people that live on Tulls Bay, the water from Survey Road goes to Guinea Road. Guinea Mill Canal goes, Survey Road, Guinea Mill, all goes to Rolling Creek, which goes to Tulls Creek. Lateral A, B, and C up to Moyock. All that water in Moyock goes under 168. It ends up going into Tulls Bay, and that's what causes problem in Beechwood Shores and other areas, plus tide affects us terrible. But I'm here tonight, would welcome any questions from any homeowner about drainage and how it can be addressed. But so some subdivisions, the newer subdivisions are being approved. They're doing an excellent job. They're putting in big, wide swells. The retention ponds are larger. They're slowly reducing water, and I think the newer subdivisions are doing great. But that water still has to go in an outfall, and that's what causes a problem. For the folks that live in back in February or March, we had a meeting here at the county, and somebody said that there were flooding up at Countrywide or Country, whatever the states is called up there by the, the ABC store. There was flooding in that community. I said, no way. That's a high piece of land. So I went up to Moyock. I went down Baxter Lane Road, and that was behind the railroad track and the barber shop, the DMV place. There was no water standing in that subdivision, and that was super low land. But everything was designed properly. The water went under Baxter Lane, went down the ditch, and went back to West River. On the opposite side of the road, behind the ABC store where their tractor supply is going, they had 6 to 8 inches of water in that subdivision on that street, and I couldn't believe it. I said, this is not possible. Why isn't it water flowing from here? So guess what, people? And the same thing at Moyock by the Howard Hanna Realty. The water is ponds were working, the big ditches were working. It went under 168, but there's a dam under the railroad track. The dam under the railroad track was keeping the water from going out. Same thing up to Moyock by the collision center, the Howard Hanna Real Estate Office. Just before you get there, there's a big ditch that comes back of that, what do you call it, Guinea, whatever the subdivision is. No, not Eagle Creek, but the other one, the first one put into Furby's. Anyway, the water from that road, the ditches were working fine there. It went under 168, and guess what? There was a dam at the railroad track. Up on Snowden Road, we found a dam there under the railroad track, was 4 foot high, blocking water. So see, the outlets is what you really got to be concerned about and look after. The soil and water, we've discovered that and used some of this money to get rid of them, but they have to be looked at in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Next I have is Melvin Evans.
Hello, my name is Melvin Evans. I live 185 Northwest Backwoods Road, and thank you for being here tonight and letting me speak to you. First thing I want to say is I'm all for drainage districts. I believe everybody needs to share in keeping drainage going, and this has been having farmed years ago, it was the farmers that kept the ditches flowing, and as you're selling off this property and doing developments, there's nobody cleaning the ditches, and I've experienced this before with the development going, having neighbors of the development, farmers go to them and say, hey, let's get an agreement when you're developing this that you'll help clean the ditches. Well, no, we're not going to do that. The people won't want to see on the homeowners thing that they've got to help pay for the ditches. But I'm in the Northwest Watershed District, and like the county manager was saying, we do not drain through Moyock, and the break is around Carolina Village. Part of Carolina Village goes towards Guinea Mill, and the other part comes towards my house, which is right down almost the line. My property runs down a couple hundred yards from the state line. Goes into Virginia there, because on the other side of the road is Virginia. And it goes through Virginia and goes under Ballahack Road, and behind, I don't know if you know where Northwest Baptist Church is. I grew up going to that church, but that's where the water goes out towards Northwest River. So our water goes that way. We're not even, none of our water flows towards Moyock. And we've had a water district for quite a while now, and we've cleaned the ditches before, and as a matter of fact, I've cleaned some of them myself. This past year, I cleaned them about 5 years ago. We had a heavy rain, a flood, and just like the gentleman was saying about the south wind, even when you're up that far, when you get a south wind, it fills up the Sound, the Bay, and Northwest River. The water's not going to run out because it's already full. And I had flooding beside. My house didn't flood, but about 5 acres beside my house flooded all the way out to the road and all the way back. And as soon as the water went down, I had a drag line in there cleaning ditches. But I want to just thank y'all for considering leaving Northwest Water District out. We have plenty of funds, and we need to do some cleaning right now. And I had, when Mike Doxey was here, I had talked to him about, I was on the board, and I talked to him about what we should be needing and what we should be doing, and he said, well, we don't need to do anything unless we have a complaint. So we haven't really met or done anything in quite a while. And I would like to get some direction on who I get with and how we can get this started up again to get some drainage issues taken care of there.
The staff member to help you with that is Ann Daisy, is her name. She replaced Mike Doxey, Ann Daisy.
Okay.
And I can find your number and we'll get you up. Dylan's got it right back there. So the gentleman in the back row with the glasses with his hands up can get you her number.
Okay, great. Well, that's about all I wanted to say was we are just totally separate issue from Moyoc. We drain a different way, and everything seems to be working well. We've got the money to do what we need to do. And thank you very much for
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Next I had was Deborah Evans.
Hi, I'm Debbie Evans, and I live at 185 Northwest Backwoods Road as well. And I'm also here for the Northwest Watershed District. And thank you for considering that. Thank you, Mr. Beaumont, for your opening prayer and leading us in the national anthem. I am so proud to live in this county that still does that. Thank you so much. And thank you all for your service. Ms. Jarvis, you were a teacher. Thank you for your years with my daughter. And Mr. McCord, you were our daughter's first basketball coach when you were in college. So, thank you all so much for the time that you have. Mr. Steichleather, you haven't yet had the opportunity to grow and love this county like we all have. And I hope you get that opportunity. I hope you take that opportunity. Thank you for your service. And I know your job partially is to keep all these people happy, but your job is first and foremost to the citizens of Currituck County. And we thank you for that. With regard to drainage, ask a farmer. The farmers know the land. And sometimes you don't need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on reports when you've got access to a bunch of farmers in this area that know how the land drains. As far as impact, drainage has been a problem ever since I've been here for 40 years. And these communities, and Mr. Roberts laid it out pretty clearly. We're getting ready to consider this Currituck crossing. How is that going to impact drainage? We need to stop the development, hold it, for a lot of reasons, not only drainage and watershed, but we need to get our schools in order. But stop it for now. Let's put a hold on it. I know you have developments on the back burner wanting to get approved. Stop it, please. Please. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. And next I had, is it Chris Hopkins?
Thank you, Mr. Commissioners. I'm here on behalf, I live in Terrell County. Work for Black Gold Farms. We farm in the Hills Lake area. The landowner is Northern Agricultural 3 LLC, and also they have someone, UBS, it's a land management group that oversees that. So I'm here to just try and find out a little bit more about information about how that will affect our farmland that's in Hells Lake. Because there's a little bit of land that's in Currituck County, but it drains out into a ditch that's on the county line. And how does this affect when two counties was back in that ditch?
I don't know.
I'm going to need somebody who knows a little bit more about where Hell's Lake is.
It goes out, Run Swamp Canal, goes under 34 at the county line. It is the county line, the ditch that he's talking about.
Okay.
But I know there's one canal in there that is actually all in Currituck, and then it goes into the county line ditch. And I was just wondering, they had a letter, I'm here on behalf of them to understand a little bit more of how this affects.
Does drain into Run Swamp Canal. It doesn't go to Guinea Mill. Right.
So you're saying this it doesn't drain into our, so it'd be.
Is it currently it's not currently in a district?
Well, if we used the line we expanded the Guinea Mill last year, it would probably have been included in it.
So it's probably already in a district?
Probably in the Guinea Mill district.
So then, effectively, it might. Yeah. Yeah, I think actually for the properties there, give me 1 second.
It's right at it.
I don't know.
Actually, there right now, the current tax rate, if you're in that district, is 2 cents, so it would go to $0.015. So it would actually reduce the tax rate.
But if he's not impacting into it, any land that they've got, I would think it'd be fair to exclude them, because it's the same situation in the Northwest.
If we don't have a map prepared, can you vote on that tonight?
I mean, if it can be specifically identified, I would think in a motion it can be excluded from the district boundaries.
It's barely in the bounds.
Yeah, it's not much.
I don't remember exact acres that we have in it that we're farming.
So currently though they've been paying the tax currently, so now they're going to go down to $0.015.
Because of your work.
Yes. So.
What was the company that owns the land? What was that name?
Northern Agricultural 3 LLC. Actually, I think that actually group is out of Canada that owns the land, which we pay the taxes.
Yes.
Yeah, I can try to pull it up, but it'll be a little bit. So
My only question was, how is that, so I can let them know how this is going to affect them. Because they got a lot.
Go down. We're going down.
Thank you.
There you go. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hopkins. That's all I had signed up for the public hearing. Is there anyone who did not make it? If you'd like to speak, please come on up and state your name and address, and we'll put you on the record here.
Got here a little late, didn't get a chance
You're
to
fine.
sign up. My name is Wendy Shannon. I live at 204 Puddin Ridge Road in Moyock. I'm both a resident and a property owner, and I'm also on the board of the existing Moyock Stormwater District. I'm a little bit torn, and always have been, about what you're doing here. I support it. I mean, and I'll state that right now. I support expanding the district. But a couple of concerns I have, both as a resident and as a member of the existing board, is you're going to focus on the outfalls because they're going to have the biggest bang. Okay, what happens with all the other areas that were bad enough to start our district in the first place? So we've got 5 main ditches, actually 6 ditches, I believe, yes, that are ongoing issues. They're not big outfalls, but they're big enough. And because we're in the oldest part of Moyock as far as the concentrated development, nothing we have there can be fixed in the nature of a new development. So we're going to have those ongoing issues. How will we be able to at least maintain some semblance of attention, given the expansive size that the new district is going to be? You already answered my question about the existing funds, so we're fine with that. But we also paid upwards of $40,000 for a study several years ago of some bigger things that we wanted to have done that we did not have the money to do, was going to take a long time to do, and we suggested that we have the county support us taking out a loan, essentially, and paying it back over time so that we could get bigger things done that needed to be done. Is that something you're going to consider in this larger district? Because things like widening existing older ditches and things is going to require more construction. It's not just clean and snag. So there are things that need to be done that are more than just clean and snag, although they do have impacts, especially when it's a car and such. Let me see. The board members you mentioned, I'm not sure I caught all of that, but I know you're going to try and equitably spread it out so that we all still have input. But I would recommend that you keep some continuity from the existing board members, because we've learned a lot. We know a lot. We can help even if we're not farmers, but we definitely need farmers as well. The people that live in developments that have homeowners associations, it's very difficult to get them to maintain their own things, which can then impact the external areas. I would like to see more teeth in the county's ability to make them do what they need, because some of these retention ponds get filled in and so forth and so on, then it backs it up and the outfalls and infalls, same issues. And the last thing I'm going to say, and this is going to sound awful, I know I'm going to be not liked after people see this, but why is it only 1.5 cents? Because we have recommended our own district existing be raised so that we could get enough money to do it. And what you're going to get off of this district, township-wide district, at the same rate we're paying, is not going to get you far. So I don't know why that's not being more. We recommended 3 cents. And at 3 cents per hundred of value, it's going to be something like $70 per year for a $250,000 home. So I would submit that you would really ought to consider making it higher. I think I pretty much covered everything. And I was looking for yellow, but I didn't see it. So
No, not here.
you've turned it off. Let me just make sure I covered everything I wanted
Good.
to.
Can I ask her a question when she's?
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
When you're
by all
done, when you're done, Wendy, you go ahead. When you're make sure everything's covered.
I think I covered it all. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're fine. Within the last 3 to 5 years, I know there's 6 or 5 ditches in the.
One. I believe there's 6.
Okay.
Ditch 1, the gentleman that spoke early on at the beginning lives behind Domino's. He lives on ditch 1. And then it goes, ditches 2 and 3 are kind of zigzag through the township. Ditch 4 runs just the east side of J Court. Then ditch 5 is between Quail Run and my little area on Puddin Ridge. And then ditch 6 is on the other side of Quail Run.
Yes,
Ditch
my
1.
backyard.
Yes, and ditch 1 runs from the backside of Quail Run all the way down past the food line, Charlie High Racing, across the highway and that way. So,
I want to say in the last maybe probably 5 years, there was some major snagging and clearing on 3 of those, I believe.
we did. We've done 6, 1. We did 5. We've done some on 4 and a little bit on 1. Some of the bigger issues, and I know most of y'all are aware of this, is the going under the highway part and what Harvey mentioned about the railroad track ditches. Those are problematic, have been for ages and ages. So some of the smaller areas right in old Moyoc Village, behind Charles Ely on the highway and back in that section there, lots of flooding. Some of it spills over from the food line area. Some of it is just because ditch 4 and between ditches 4 and ditch 1 across Puddin Ridge, they don't flow fast enough. And then, I did not know this, but the Moyoc Shingle Landing Creek that runs, I guess, from Quail Run all the way out to the highway is not in the existing district. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't do anything with it. And that's what I hope this is going to help in some fashion, as well as the big areas that were mentioned. Did that cover it? All right, thank you so much for your attention and time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Uh-oh, here he comes.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
Do I need to stay?
He's back.
Yep, I'd like to compliment Wendy Shannon and Peggy Luss and Charles Ely. I got a call a month or two ago from a man named Marvin Scaff. He's probably 92, 95 years old. He said he went to school with my father. I went up to see him, and him and his wife were the ones that tried to first institute a Moyoc drainage district. And they told me they have 4 and 5 inches of water going in their garage that's in between the food line and Puddin' Ridge Road. So I've been up there, and although I'm talking about outlets, there's a real simple solution to some of Wendy's and Peggy Lusk and Marvin Scaff's drainage problems. And I've went and I've walked a lot of the ditch from Shingle Landing Creek behind the new Dollar Tree, behind the Dr. Rom's old office. I mean, all through there that goes out to Puddin' Ridge Road. That's where there's a lot of handwork needs to be done. And then it goes on to Charles Ely's and goes right on to Mr. Scaff's. I've already looked at a lot of that stuff, and I've looked at ditches in Quail Run and the Soil and Water. Morris West is here tonight. He's a supervisor. He's a chairman. And we've got Dylan as a supervisor. Yeah, we're concerned about outlets, but when you have people 95 years old, 5 inches of water in their garage, that's not good. And like where Wendy and them live. So there's some simple solutions there, but it's going to take handwork. You can't get in there with equipment, but I'm concerned about these homeowners plus outlets.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
And you have to have people from the community that live in those communities, because they deal with the water all the time, and they're your best information.
Thank you. All right. I
was just going to say, the ditch that Harvey just spoke about, ditch 1, where it goes behind the post office, it might be a foot deep right there. So it can't handle the water that comes from behind Charles Ely's and Food Line.
Well, and that's where I think when we get this set up, when we get these advisory boards in place, we start prioritizing, we start addressing this with Harvey and the group, and then we start get the action plan together and we start moving forward. I think this is good conversations coming out of this, but I think this is the intent, is to start addressing it and start getting some action done for our citizens. So that's all I had signed up. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this. Is there any other questions or further comments from this board? If not, I'm going to go ahead and ask this board for some action on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move for approval with the caveat that the Northwest District is excluded. And also, we will look at the portion of Hales Lake that was mentioned here tonight. And option B.
Is the intent to exclude those properties?
Yes.
Then let me just read into the record, maybe you include in your motion the following partial identification numbers: 0018000002B 0000 00180000010000 and 0018000002A0000.
That's what you say.
Is that what you're including in your motion?
If he's got enough zeros,
Okay.
I'll second his motion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Let me ask this board, do we need to take a quick 5-minute recess or
Absolutely.
keep going? Okay. All right, 5 minutes and we'll get to the next item. Thank you. Okay, we'll reconvene. next item is under public hearing is consideration and possible adoption of the annual budget for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2022, following public hearing. And with that, I believe the county manager has this. Oops, I got my mic on now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to, since I presented the budget, there were just a few changes. I wanted to go over those. Be happy to answer any questions that the board might have about the budget. And then there's a sheet that's been handed out over on tax rates. I wanted to go over that, and then that'll end my presentation. So since I made the budget presentation, the following changes have been made. We've updated workers' comp in each of the departments. We received actual costs since the presentation. Liability and property insurance have been updated in 10-960 after the actual cost received from the insurance carrier. We had to create a fund specifically for the ARP funding. That's Fund 530. That's the recovery money that we've gotten. We created two funds for those trust funds. It's Fund 300 and 301 for the insurance after retirement benefits. We reclassified the aging and senior director from a grade 60.5 to a grade 63. We reclassified the animal services and control director and also changed the title to more accurately reflect, but we went from a grade 60 to a 63. We removed the Coin Jock Canal project from the FY22 budget because we actually put it in this budget and put it into a multi-year fund, so just so we can go ahead and start some of the design work and that kind of thing. We've also reclassified the clerk to the board from a grade 65 to a grade 68. We've removed the reclassification of the HR director, so it's going to stay at a grade 68. And we added engineering fees for the utility projects for electrical engineering portion. We'll do the rest of the design in-house, but engineering realized they needed some help with the electrical design. So those are the changes since my budget presentation. The document that you have in front of you lays out a tax rate history as well as revenue neutral for each of the tax districts that you have. As you can see, we've talked a lot about the general fund. You have a lot of other tax districts that exist within Currituck County. I'm going to go briefly through those and talk about why we've recommended either holding the tax rate or going with the revenue neutral rate. Corolla Fire and Knott's Island, we're recommending that both of those stay at a 5-cent tax. They're still heavily subsidized by other funds at this point. We're recommending that we talked about the Moyock water, or the hog ditch staying at a 1 penny. It generates, I think, $1,200 a year at 1 penny, so I wouldn't recommend going below that. On the Moyock Improvement District, we've talked about that. We recommend a tax rate, like I said, of 1.5 pennies. Northwest, you'll need to change. Right now, it says it's a 0 tax rate, but I would recommend going with the 2 cents that they're currently paying. It'll be a little bit of an increase in revenue for them, but like I said, they only generate about $2,700 a year. That's the district that you've kept separate, so I would recommend approving the budget with a 2-cent tax rate there. The Ocean Sands North Crown Point could have come down, but they're going to have a large project at some point in the future, so we recommended not going down in that district. The Wellhead tax rate, we recommended actually holding it at 0.155. We saw some kind of anomalies within the Wellhead district where we actually saw some property values on that 4th row go down slightly. So that's why you see the revenue neutral rate's actually higher, but they should be able to fund the projects that they have with the 0.155 rate. You've got the same similar situation with Crover Roads. You've got it basically minimal changes, so recommending going down a penny. I said Crover Roads, I misspoke. The Wellhead Beach Disposal District recommend going to 0.019. Recommend holding Crover Roads at 1 penny. They already want to do more things in that service district than what the penny will generate. And then finally, the Ocean Sands Water and Sewer District, we recommend just going to a rate basically rounded up revenue neutral. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody might have about
The Moyock Common Sewer District?
that one. It no longer exists. I'm guessing that it was something back in the day that paid for the sewer plant back behind the food line.
Well, it helped cover the expense and kept the rates, tried to adjust our sewer rates.
Any questions, board members? Selena, did you say you had something you had a question on or something, or?
Yeah. What was about that sales tax legislation that we spoke of? What's the status with that legislation right now? Do you know?
Yeah, that legislation is right now in the Rules Committee in the Senate, so it went for a first reading. It's been there since May 12th. I mean, it's tough to predict whether they'll take any action on it. Normally, if something sits in the Rules Committee for that long, it's not coming out, but that doesn't mean it won't.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike.
No, thank you. Is there any other questions for the county manager? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and ask this board to go ahead and take some action on adoption of this budget.
Mr. Chairman, you need to open the public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I had it right here in front of me. Thank you. I'm sorry, I had it right here. It's been a long night, I apologize. I want to open up the public hearing of the annual budget for fiscal year 2021-22. I have nobody signed up on the hearing sheet. Is anybody in the audience not signed up? Would you speak on it?
Chief?
Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Now I will ask the board for some action on the annual budget. Well, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the annual budget for the fiscal year June 30th, 2022, with the amendments that was presented to us by the county manager tonight on it. So I'll make a motion for approval.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. So we're good to go on that. Thank you. Okay. All right. The next item is new business, consideration of revised wild horse management agreement. I believe county manager has that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From time to time, we have to update the wild horse management agreement. This is an agreement between the state of North Carolina, Federal Fish and Wildlife, Currituck County, and the Corolla Wild Horse Fund. It lays out, it's been presented in your agenda packet, it lays out some of the responsibilities. One of the biggest changes in the agreement that most affects the county is it lays out that the county once every 20 years will be responsible for replacing the northern or the southern fence directly and for helping to fund Corolla Wild Horse Fund to replace the northern fence. The reason it's set up that way is, I think we've discussed this before, that fence actually sits in Virginia, and so we can't directly fund any project that does that. So there is a little bit of a time crunch with this. There's an appropriation bill at the Senate level, federal Senate level, that basically designates the size of the horse herd. So if we adopt this and sign it, all parties sign it before June 29th, I believe, or 27th, it locks that size of the herd in, which is important from a federal standpoint because it means that in the past there's been some debate from the federal government about how big the herd needed to be. This kind of takes it out of that. There's, I'll be happy to answer any questions I can about this. Obviously, I'm going to struggle to answer operational questions for the Wild Horse Fund, but I'll do everything that I can. And if we've got too many questions, it might be that I'll have to see if the Wild Horse Fund wants to come.
I'm a board member.
That we have a board member.
There you go.
I could probably answer.
What is the number of the herd?
It's about 100 right now.
100, 106 maybe.
Well, yeah, they're right around 100.
And they're recommending no more than 130. I think there's some environmental concerns about a herd that big, I know from the Coastal Reserve.
They're I think comfortable with the 130, no bigger. I mean, so that it's. I think the federal legislation sets it from 100 to 130, and I might be off a little bit on the 100 number, but it's around that. At the last update we had, they said that they're not having as many foals born as they used to, so they're kind of seeing that population level a little bit. But
yeah, they were darting too many of the mares with the PZP, and that was causing probably some sterility issues down the road with some of those mares, and there were older mares, but they have figured out also that they're only foaling in certain areas, so they're looking at that actually and how to move some of the horses around, get them to migrate and commingle with some other harems, and spread the genetic diversity out a little bit.
So I had a couple of questions. So that's a change, right? But this looks like, I mean, other than the title on this of 2020 to 2025, none of the details are updated in this. And I remember at least 2 years ago us saying we wanted the Wild Horse Fund to come in and brief this board as to what was going on and et cetera, et cetera. So in going through that, a couple of my questions are, we're all talking about the horse census. They're supposed to do it at least once a year, no less than once a year. The last horse number that I could see in here was in August of 2017.
So they update that. I mean, every quarter they give a census. I think they fly it 2 or 3 times a year.
They fly it, and they've.
Well, they say that, but I could not find in this report that any updated number.
I thought we had a report given to us last year.
We did before, the year before COVID in 19.
Yeah,
we did.
COVID threw it out last year.
But even then, I'm telling you, this has not been updated with any of the and
language.
allow me to continue. The most recent activity that the county, didn't we just replace the cattle grate?
About 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's accurate.
Yeah.
And then they said, this is for confirmation, that the U.S. Fish and North Carolina Wildlife is the largest landowner in this area. I thought,
We got most of it now.
right, and that's not reflected in this report.
Land swap.
This is
So it needs to be cleaned up.
This is not a new report. This is
So it's
Recycle.
it's not it's not a new report. I will say that it's
not
an
even
update.
revised.
So what we did is when we went through the revision, what we looked
They
at
definitely revised parts of it.
was the section that has the goals, the action items. So that is the part that we reviewed as the Wild Horse Advisory Board.
Action 1C is an action item that's not reflected in this report, which is the census data. 81. And then the other thing I'd point out, and we've had a discussion amongst the board over horses that have an issue that have to be taken off, and their policy is they don't go back, to which is curious because part of one of their other action goals is to introduce the Shackelford ponies into the mix. So I'm curious how a pony that's nowhere near here gets trailered to the Outer Banks, and that's okay, but a pony that we take off, you get it?
So, Paul, I can answer that.
Sure.
And that's one of the reasons they stuck me on the board, is to have the commissioner working with them. So the horses, originally Karen McAlpin came in here and said, well, you can't take them out because they'll be exposed to whatever, and we can't reintroduce them. But the reality is, by the time they pull a horse off, by the time Meg Puckett pulls a horse off, that horse is so severely injured that it can't, it's probably near death or whatever. By the time it's rehabbed, it is gentled, it is so used to humans, it's habituated, it can't be reintroduced to the wild. It's been fed in a field, a pasture, whatever. So Karen's argument may have not held much sway with me or you, in that it's going to get different bugs over here on the mainland than on the beach or whatever, and bring that stuff back. The Shackelford Banks horses, though, however, are left to their own, just like ours, and they have almost the exact same strain of horse. So to introduce them is a good thing genetically.
Oh, I'm not doubting the genetic.
So yes, the original argument was Karen was like, oh, you can't bring them back for the previous stated reasons. But the reality is, when a horse gets taken off, Meg has exhausted every option to not take that horse off. So when she takes them off, they are in dire straits.
Because one of the things that you and I discussed was potentially using Corova. They've got a horse fence in there. As a equine owner, right? Not every horse is near death, right?
No, these
some
are generally,
still need to have the ability to keep eyes on, and I don't mean go out there and be petting on it, but sometimes you can mitigate a horse's health without it having to be ambulatory.
And I think most of but the reality is the ones that are coming off, they're they're bad. They're really bad. There's something major. They're going to the hospital. Half of them are going over to NC State. They're not going straight to the farm here to be, whatever. And we actually have a vet now that helps treat the horses who's on the board as well. So he evaluates them based on conversations with Meg. Can't think of his name right off the top of my head, but he's new to the board. So, but he is part of that evaluation process if they decide to pull a horse off. It is a big deal.
And I know now that they're required to provide a necropsy.
Yes.
For one that dies, which is good.
Yep.
I just would have liked to have seen like this factually. I get it. I guess I don't get it. Everybody knows numbers, but none of them are in here as far as what the population
Right.
is.
So, yes, the population is right at 100. They're pretty sure it's right at 100 because they know the horses, the territories they roam in, their home ranges, and there are several that are out in the marsh right now that they still haven't come out. They know there's a new foal out there, and they still haven't seen that foal yet.
Because this is saying 81.
Right. So someone hasn't updated this when this was prepared.
There's
many years ago.
They tweaked what you alluded to, Ben.
The action item.
But there's a lot.
Yeah.
This report needs to be this agreement needs to be revised.
Well,
So are you asking to
So-
have it
Yeah, but we
revised?
don't have a lot of time.
Take
like he
action
said.
on it?
well, the parts of this agreement that are important are who's doing what. Not the
I got it.
81 horses
I
or
agree.
100 horses.
Fills out responsibilities.
Right, it's the area for responsibility, and that has gotten better and better. I think Ben can attest to his short time of dealing with this, but the participation with all the parties to finally recognize that these horses belong out there and should stay out there is there, and that's the big part of this agreement was getting all of those parties to recognize
And
that.
was this what they were discussing that day in the?
It wasn't that long ago, the feds wanted to see it reduced to about 60.
60 horses. That wasn't genetically sustainable for them at all, and they were close to that.
Yes.
Not many years ago. So they're in a good place right now. The biggest problem is the low birth rates at this point with the mares that are producing, and it's older mares that are producing, not the younger ones at this point in time.
And going back to the Karen days,
Yeah.
I was vocal about
I know
it.
you were.
The sterilization of mares.
She did a lot of harm. I think.
I said, and I brought it up.
Yep.
There's a lot of adverse comment on that, studies on that, biology on that, and we shot them and shot them and shot them, and here we are. And so, but I am disappointed that this agreement is not better than it is. I mean, I understand the roles and all that.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that should have been done, it was not a heavy lift, right? That was not. And I'd love to see Wild Horse come and present.
I think that she'd be happy to come over here. We just have to ask them.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just a matter of acting and come out and do an admin report. Yeah, they'd
Do
be
we
happy
have to do that every year?
Well, just
I mean,
invite them
ask.
like we do other people.
Yeah.
But, okay, that was a process
So we need to
that
put
we
a
all
tickler-
agreed on many years ago that we need to bring it back up.
We need a tickler to invite them annually to present. Whatever. Maybe about now is good because we got all the happy foals out there, so we can talk about happy foals.
Okay, any other questions or concerns from the board? So I guess then, after hearing Paul's discussions, I mean, probably in the future, we probably need to get them to come in. However, then I guess tonight, yep. We have a crunch time, you said?
There is a little bit of one. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask next. So we have a motion for approval, and we have a second for Commissioner McCord. Any further discussion?
Yes. I'm going to vote probably against the approval. It has nothing to do with the agreement or the policies and the arrangements. Has nothing to do with that. But as, looking over taxpayer money, part of it goes to Fund Wild Horse. This is a report they're required to give. It's not a surprise that it has to come to us. They had ample time to get this updated. So just.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the board? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, next item is consideration of license agreement between Currituck County and the Crawl Volunteer Fire Department, Inc. for location of training facility on Currituck, or county property. I believe we have Ben Cycleather, County Manager, on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a process we've talked about a lot. This is a license agreement that would allow Currituck County, or would allow Corolla Volunteer Fire Department to construct the training facility that they've been talking about for about a year and a half now on the property that we have that holds the Pine Island Water Plant. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Nope, I just think it's going to be a great training facility for our fire departments. I mean, we need something, because right now, we're going to Buxton or Virginia Beach area and nothing close by, so.
Mr. Chairman, the other thing I would throw out there is the problem we have right now is with the firefighters that we have in Corolla, they can actually train while still on duty and local, whereas right now, anytime they have to go to training, that's overtime.
Yep.
Every single time.
Yeah, but I think the other fire departments would like to have something closer to that they could utilize as well, so. All right, any,
Move to approve.
discussion? Okay, we have a
Second.
Motion for approval, second by Commissioner Jarvis. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is consideration of license agreement between Currituck County and Daniel A. Pennington, owner of Pass Assault Restaurant in Currituck, North Carolina, for use of county property for customer parking. Mr. Ben Stuckler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a license agreement that will allow Pass the Salt to utilize our gravel parking lot across the street. Essentially, they're looking to do an expansion. They don't have enough room to do the expansion and add the required 3 parking spaces under the UDO. This is a way for us just to kind of be a good neighbor. Also, I'd point out in your strategic goals, you talked about wanting to try to encourage this area around the waterfront to be something. If it's going to be something, we're going to have some kind of public parking probably to facilitate that. Be happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is item D, Commissioner Travel Approval, NACO Annual Conference, Prince George County, Maryland. County Manager, you have this one again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the board policy states, the board actually has to approve out-of-state travel for commissioners. So Commissioner Jarvis and Commissioner Kitty Etheridge are requesting to travel to the NACO Annual Conference in Prince George's County, Maryland.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to say that I appreciate the opportunity. I know 2 years ago when I was really green, I'm still green, but very green as Owen's jacket. I had the opportunity to go to a NACO meeting, and it was just really an invaluable experience, and I look forward to that experience, so I appreciate it.
We'll take plenty of notes and report back to us.
Definitely.
everybody.
One question.
Yes.
I know we have to.
Just get a
Going off, and not that I just was curious. I mean,
Quick question.
are y'all driving to that or flying?
I'm driving. I have to be back
It's just up in Maryland.
I mean, I know it's like
at 8 a.m. for an 8 a.m. meeting on Tuesday, so I'm driving. I don't know.
Gosh,
about
flying would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
Take
going to
it
fly.
twice as long.
It's just DC.
It would.
It's
It'd
5
take
hours.
twice as long.
It's 5 hours. I can do that in my sleep.
Drive to Raleigh to fly out.
Yeah.
We have a motion
It's
and a
no
second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Closer
you.
than going home, right, Slam?
Next item is the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Which stands. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Can I ask for a motion to adjourn our regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second from Commissioner McCord. And I now will convene this board into this.
You
You didn't take a vote.
didn't take a vote.
Got a move in a
I
second.
thought I did.
Nope. You named the first and the second.
Move, second.
Okay.
Aye.
I'm tired. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? I apologize. It's been a long day for me. I apologize.
It's all right. We've been there.
Okay, motion passes. My apologies, board.
Stop.
Okay,
Keep
now,
moving.
okay, now I will convene this board in a special meeting of Tourism Development Authority. That, I believe we have.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the first thing on the agenda is the public hearing and possible action on the TDA budget. There were no changes from the presented budget, manager's presented budget at the last meeting. Be happy to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Got to have a public hearing first.
Got a public hearing. Got it right here.
I'll second the
Any question?
There's no public here.
Any questions from the board? Okay, if not, I'm going to go ahead and open public hearing for the Tourism Development Authority annual budget for fiscal year 21-22. Anybody in the audience would like to speak on this that's not signed up? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing.
And camera to
I'm going to ask the
audience.
board for some action on this.
So moved.
Motion for approval.
Second.
Second from Commissioner White. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the TDA budget amendments.
Move to adjourn.
Budget amendments
Budget amendments.
are to get us through the end of the operating year.
Oh, slow down. Slow down, everybody. Okay, I know we're
Be
talking.
happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve the budget amendments.
Okay, budget amendments. We have a
I'll
motion
second.
approved. We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Paul, you're up.
Now I will take a motion to adjourn the TDA. We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Can stay here.
Thank you. I will now convene this board into the special meeting of Ocean Sands Water and Sewage District. I believe.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so this is the public hearing and possible action on the annual budget. No changes since the manager's presented budget on Ocean Sands. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the board?
Nope.
No questions? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and now open the public hearing of the Ocean Sands Water and Sewage District annual budget for fiscal year 21-22. I have no one signed up. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this matter that hasn't signed up? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close public hearing and ask the board for action.
Move for approval.
Motion for approval from Selena,
I'll
Commissioner
second.
Jarvis, and a second from Commissioner White. Any further discussions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the
Budget amendments.
OSWSD budget amendments. Ben,
Once again, these are to get us through the end of the fiscal year. Be happy to answer any questions.
Move to approve.
have a motion for approval, second for Commissioner Owens. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. I would like a motion for adjournment.
Move to, second.
Kevin McCord and second by Commissioner White. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, everyone, for a nice, tedious, nice, great first back meeting here.
Thank
Thank you, thank you.
You know what?